Hello, and welcome to Select and Start, the podcast about meaningful and memorable video games. I'm your host, Keifer, and every episode I bring on a guest who selects a game that made an impact on their life. I have a wonderful guest with me. He is a visual designer and composer of video games. It is my honor to introduce Andrew Elmore. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Hello. They ain't found a way to kill me yet.
We're all amazing.
The best I could do these days.
They're after you, and they're going to be after me next.
Finally.
51 episodes in. I'm ready. Take me. Hit me.
Ready to answer for my crimes.
God. I'm going to punish you today by talking about video games. But before we get into that, I want before we get into all that, for the people who do not have the pleasure of knowing you, Andrew, what do you do and what do you like?
I make the video games.
Hey.
Through both visual design, through like brand stuff and UI and UX and all that, as well as music composition and sound design and all that fun stuff. Whatever keeps rent paid at this point, I guess. Like
You're freelancing right now, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah. You are somebody who has worked in video games before, but before we get into that, let's talk about employment. This episode is brought to you by unemployment. Specifically, one's brought about by layoffs.
Woo!
Andrew, you worked for Bungie for a number of years, and in October 30th, 2023, you were among those employees laid off during that round of layoffs.
Sure
what was like experiencing that firsthand instead of as a news item?
It wasn't ideal. It wasn't my favorite thing that happened that week. I've talked about this a little bit before, but I knew that was coming because the one of the previous town hall meetings that we'd had a couple months back, Pete Parsons, the CEO, kept repeating, and I don't remember what his exact phrasing was, but he kept repeating the same phrase over and over throughout this whole meeting. He was just like, we have no plans for any kind of layoffs or anything like that in the future, or whatever it was. I don't remember, I'm trying to choose my words carefully so I don't legally slander somebody or whatever, but he said there's no layoffs coming, and however many words, enough times that I was like, oh, okay, layoffs are coming, got it. So I started brushing up the old portfolio and all that fun stuff. And then, morning of October 30th rolls around, and just, the head of my department starts having to call everybody one by one to, let them know, basically, whether it's happening or not. And, it's not the first time that I've been laid off by any means, but it was the first time in a while. I was at Bungie for just about half a decade, which is far and away the longest I've ever been anywhere. It was not the most bloodbathy layoff that I've been through either, although I think that more just serves to condemn other adjacent industries, maybe. Yeah, it was very strange. I felt a sense of, it sounds weird to say about a layoff, but like an imposter syndrome, just because I was in good company. There were a lot of really excellent, wonderful, talented, legendary people that helped make that studio what it is and molded that legacy with their hands over decades that were just axed at random one day. No ceremony or anything. And that still hurts. It's weird. I'm more frustrated about what was done to people that I worked with and care about than I am about the fact that I've now spent the last 11 months here trying to keep the lights on and stay in a home.
Right. I really appreciate you opening up about all that stuff. I know it can be a challenging and difficult thing to talk about on an emotional level, and speaking about something that not just affects you, but the peers and the people you've gotten to work with, talented people who you have gotten to know over the course of what you said, half a decade, working at the same place and having that stability, and the one taken away from you. I can definitely speak to, once you hear no layoffs, everyone's going to hear the word layoffs, because It's like, if everything was fine, you wouldn't have to say the word. It's like the bomb in the airport thing. If somebody's screaming, there is no bomb, people are like, bomb.
Right. Yeah, it's my human trafficking t-shirt is whatever the tweet was. Yeah,
the "my not involved in human trafficking" t-shirt is
prompting a lot of questions that are already answered by my t-shirt. It's kind of that. At the time, it was because that first kind of wave of industry layoffs was starting last year, and some studios were shutting down and cutting a lot of staff. So there was a lot of concern and nervousness throughout, I was going to say the company, but really I think throughout the industry, and there still is. But there was a lot of fear there of just like, hey, are we also as screwed as so many of our peers or whatever? Which is why they were directly responding to that. But again, the fact that he kept repeating that so many times throughout the next like hour or whatever of the call, I was like, oh, okay, I've heard this before.
Yeah. Again, you wouldn't have to say it if it wasn't a problem.
Exactly.
Not involved in human trafficking t-shirt and so on and so forth.
Yes.
And unfortunately, this wasn't the last time that's happened to Bungie in the last year. On July 31st, 2024, nearly 2 months after the release of the very well-received Destiny 2 DLC, The Final Shape, around 220 employees at Bungie were laid off as a result of the company's restructure and integration into their parent company, Sony, who acquired Bungie in 2022, which was a year before you would be laid off in your position. Anyway, this was 17% of the company's workforce, and another 12% of that workforce was apparently moved under Sony to spin off into a new studio. So these things are still happening. Like you said, last year was a very, very trying year for the video game industry in terms of layoffs and restructurings and closures. And this year has been even worse, and things have continued to happen since then. So my solidarity and my sincerest empathy to the people, sympathies and feelings and thoughts out there for the people who are continuing to be affected by this this phenomena.
Yeah, that's a way to put it. I know what you meant by that, but I want to be careful about like passive language around stuff like this, because so much of the way that these things are presented from the corporate side, like from the C-suite down, is always using words like phenomena and headwinds and EBITDA and any like weird little like businessy phrases that they need to absolve themselves of responsibility for the actions that they are taking and are very directly responsible for. That's not what you were doing or anything.
No. Of course, I again personally laid off. I have my strong feelings. I just do not want. I want to make sure I'm not saying something too strongly in your presence, because if I start talking about like the invisible hand is this made up thing that is just removing the accountability of human like removing the humanity and human capital, we could be here all day.
That's very true. It's like we're theoretically here to talk about a video game, and I'm already like.
Yeah. Anyway, let's start from the bottom and climb our way to the top.
Sure.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much for opening up about all that stuff. I really appreciate talking to you about this, because it's wonderful to have a person who is like a bona fide video game developer. And it is also unfortunate because bona fide video game developers are kind of wandering around the, like spare games. Anyone's got a spare game to work on.
Just there's a bunch of like Ronin in black t-shirts just wandering around tech cities, just looking for builds to push. I don't know. You ever start a joke and you don't actually have a punchline, and you're hoping that you will by the time you get there, but you don't anyway.
Yeah. The wandering Ronin, also known as contract workers. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So you've expressed your bona fides as a video game developer by going through the ceremony of losing your job. But we also have to check your gaming credentials on a person who plays video games here. As we know, no community likes to gatekeep more than the gamers, and we have to check your gaming credentials here. This is especially crucial as you are the maker of the games. So let's talk about your gaming history a bit here, Andrew. How did you get into video games?
They were kind of just around. I don't know. I've never had a good answer to that question. It's like some of my earliest memories are of there being like a Sega Genesis in the house, or like DOS games and stuff like that. So it's like, I've like blurry early childhood like mental snapshots of like Echo the Dolphin and like I don't know, Duke Nukem 1, Commander Keen or something. But like,
sorry, I'm just imagining like somebody being haunted by the images of Echo the Dolphin and Duke Nukem.
Oh man, that'd be a terrible. Yeah, it's the Floating Heads in Eternal Darkness, but it's just John St. John riding around on a floating space dolphin.
Yeah, just like Moon Knight wandering around in the night, and it's like, I've got balls of steel, that kind of stuff.
Those alien bastards are gonna pay for messing up my time.
That's good. That's good. Look at that. All right, but sorry, continue. Beyond the being haunted by the specter of the Sega Genesis, what else?
I was like, I remember there being time travel in Echo. I know there's xenomorphs in that game. It goes some places. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But so I was, it feels weird because I feel like most of the time when talking to other people in the industry, I feel like a walking newborn when I say that I was born in 1993. But it's also like, I don't know, man, I'm over 30. I have 2 kids, whatever. Old is old now. It's fine. Whatever. But yeah, no. So when I want to say Christmas '96, I believe what happened was my dad sold that Genesis and bought an N64, and so that was kind of my main like quote unquote like childhood platform throughout the '90s. I guess I had access to through relatives and stuff, regular access to like the NES and Atari 2600 libraries. So I played a lot of that growing up as well. Game Boy Color at the time, and then '02 got an Xbox, and also we got a GameCube in like '04. I'm at this point I'm just like walking through a long list of just every console that I bought. And that's not particularly helpful, but like my point is it was just always there around in the house, like something that was a whole family thing up until probably around like 2010-ish or so. I think like my dad always played games until I think the last two that he really played were like Halo Reach and Red Dead Redemption, and then he just kind of fell off. But that stuff was always just kind of around. I don't know.
Yeah, so like that, your dad was kind of like the tastemaker in terms of like what video games you were playing around the house. Am I understanding that?
Kind of, I suppose. Like I didn't have Nintendo Power and stuff. Like I didn't have like a lot of the traditional methods that people had for discovering new games and stuff at the time. It was basically just like word of mouth on the playground, and once you got into the 2000s, it was like checking the internet and stuff. I remember at like 97 or something, just hopping on our Windows 95 Packard Bell and opening up probably like Netscape Navigator or something and just typing Zelda.com and it not going anywhere, and me being like, well, I don't know, this internet thing seems maybe not so great after all. I assume that also to this day probably still doesn't go anywhere. I
Let's
bet no one
test
has
it
bought
out.
that. No one has that domain. There's no way.
Zelda Fitzgerald Society. What the hell?
What?
No, let me see. Zelda.com will lead to zelda.nintendo.com. And
That makes sense.
There we go. Yep.
An earth-shaking surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were growing up. You tried using the internet to find video games. No such luck.
I mean, eventually, yes, there was plenty of coverage and stuff like that.
What would you say your favorite games were around that time when you were living with your family?
I mean, like as a kid, it was a lot of it was just like stuff that I had access to on the N64 or whatever for the most part, right? And then it's hard to look back on a lot of those fondly now, having revisited any of them as a non-child, because most of the N64's library is unique. So anyway, I think I was clicking really well with a lot of like action platformers on the NES for the most part. As a kid, it was a lot of like Mega Man 6, Ninja Gaiden 2, stuff like that. And on the N64, I think I was more interested in some of the bigger, broader experiences and stuff there that were a little less arcadey. But I think that's largely because just aren't really as many games that are kind of geared in that direction on the N64. So like I played most of the major first party stuff, the Mario 64s, the Zeldas,
never heard of it,
the Mario Karts, etc. But yeah, no, I think Ocarina of Time was really big for me because I was like 5 or something when that came out, and that really set a precedent, I guess, for lack of a better word, for my own expectations of like what a video game could be and what it could do. That turned it from a fun electronic toy into the like, oh, you can just go on a big old adventure or whatever. And then 2 years later, Majora's Mask comes out and is like, hey, would you like to be a tourist in the grief of strangers as they come to grips with their own mortality over and over and over? And I was like, I'm 7 years old. I would love this. Thank you. Teach me about death, please.
Basically, my journey, just like subtract a couple of years there, because my first video game memory is watching my brothers play Ocarina of Time. I was born in 96, and then like that, and then watching them play Majora's Mask when I was 4 just rewired my brain and like set the expectation of what video games could do really high.
Yeah, that game is... This might be the only safe place I can say this, but I personally feel that Majora's Mask is Nintendo's creative peak.
It's my favorite game of all time.
I also don't think it's close either. Yeah, I love that game, dude. Warts and all, I adore it.
It's incredible. We were talking about my most meaningful experience, and I have already 20 plus episodes ago. We'd be talking about that all day, and I'm happy to talk about it again. But we got to talk about Rez, which is another game that has hit me really hard. But yeah, you're pointing at a Rez poster on your wall there.
Yeah, that was there is one other person that I know of on the internet that has gone to even greater lengths than I to find a random weird crap what says res on it. And that is a man by the name of Brian Hargrove, who was kind enough to DM me one day when he found that promotional like launch poster there on Yahoo Auctions Japan. He was like, hey, I haven't seen one of these in like 10 years. You should grab it. And I was like, I should grab it.
That is probably one of the coolest finds in terms of stuff on the show. I would say like number one is, I had my guest on for Final Fantasy VIII, and she had a tattoo of, Rinua's on her back. And then second place is probably like you imported a poster from Japan that was a promotional item, probably for a store of some kind, and now it's in your house forever.
Yeah, when you said FF8, I thought you were going to say that she had that JVC mini disc player or whatever. I was like, man, I haven't even played Final Fantasy VIII, and that thing looks so rad.
Oh yeah, that looks rad, but the permanent tattoo of the thing on your body.
A little bit more meaningful, yeah. You literally carry around forever.
It seems like you grew up in a Nintendo household. Well, no, you had the.
It was pretty mixed.
Did you have a PlayStation 2 or just a GameCube in your house?
No, so no, it was more. I think by that point, like my younger sisters had gotten old enough that they were like, we should throw a Nintendo box in their room with a old CRT or whatever, so that they just have, like a kid's game machine or whatever, and we'll go hook this Xbox up in the living room.
Right.
But yeah, it was more agnostic, I think. Some of my other really early memories from like 95, 96 are of in my cousin's house when they had got a PlayStation when that was brand new. So I have these like very brief flashes of just being enamored with the color palette of like Ridge Racer and Tekken 1 and stuff like that. But it was weird. I feel like growing up, and I don't know if this is just because of like physical proximity to Redmond and NOA or something, but I feel like most people that I knew around here, I should mention for the show, I'm out in Seattle, by the way. But I feel like everyone that I knew around here, like the other kids and stuff, also all had N64s growing up. And then in the 2000s, we all had Xboxes, and, like half the other kids I knew had GameCubes or whatever. But It's not that PS2s were uncommon. They just were not as, I don't know that they were the like default in the way that they seem to have been everywhere else.
Sure.
Same with the PS1 also. It was weird growing up later and seeing sales numbers and being like, oh no, I was in a weird little bubble. Like, it'd be like if if it was however many years earlier, it would have been like, yeah, you grew up in the one town where every kid had a TurboGrafx for some reason. Like that's it's very strange. So it just felt so overwhelmingly ubiquitous to me at the time, culturally or whatever. But yeah, then coming to find out later how pitifully small those adoption numbers were compared to some of their peers or whatever. But yeah, anyway, I got a PSP in 2005. I'd saved up a bunch of lawn mowing money. We were going to go on a big old camping trip out to like deep into Montana. So we were going to be driving for like, 100 years. So I saved up a bunch of lawn mowing money over summer and bought me a PlayStation Portable. And that ended up being my intro to a lot of stuff that was kind of, the stuff you traditionally consider being like, a PlayStation stable of series and stuff like that, Wipeout, Ape Escape. It was like, so a lot of that stuff I had played at other, people's houses and stuff before. It's not like I was unfamiliar with any of that. It was just, it wasn't something like, I did not have my own like journey with Gran Turismo or whatever, for example.
Right.
Until then.
Yeah. So you have the PlayStation Portable is like your first foray into like the PlayStation ecosystem.
Yeah.
Just growing up in general, like going into your teen years and everything like that. Any other like standout video games to you in that era? Like what was the thing that started pushing you towards game development as a career path?
Yeah. I actually have hard answers for that, which is weird. One of the early ones is when we did get our Xbox, it was Christmas of 2002. So it had that pack-in double disc with Sega GT 2002 and Jet Set Radio Future.
Nice.
I think we also had Tony Hawk 3 and 2X and Halo. That was all like super formative for me. All of those were.
Yeah.
For sure. But Jet Set Radio Future in particular was a really big cartoonish color bomb going off in my face of, just like hyper stylization that I did not know was possible because I had, very little interaction with like the Dreamcast or whatever. Again, like I was a kid. I didn't have knowledge of all of this stuff that had happened already. I was still learning about the world around me. So, Jet Set Radio Future hits, and I just never encountered anything like that before. It was wild, and I have played through that game just about once a year ever since. And then, now that Bomb Rush Cyberpunk has come out, that's become a good, I have a new version of this thing now.
Still meaning to get around to that. It looks really good.
It's fantastic. It's exactly what I hoped that thing would be.
Yeah.
But so that was a huge one in terms of just kind of igniting a lot of my excitement behind what can be done with aesthetic, with style as substance. And then Halo is this fusion of all of these other different kind of aesthetics that were also, popular in pop culture at the time. Like, there is a lot of James Cameron's Aliens in there. There's a lot of anime in there. There's a lot of just general oorah military stuff in there.
Yeah.
And having grown up in a Marine Corps family, it was just kind of like, it's like, oh yeah, no, I know all these things they're shouting. That's fine.
Yeah.
The moment, the singular thing that really was the fulcrum that my life ended up pivoting on was Wipeout Pure, which is the Wipeout game that launched with the PSP from Studio Liverpool. And the design work on that by a designer named John Mashin, who also did Drive Club, Onrush, Wipeout Pulse, a few other things. Just design work in that game is incredible. All of the visual stuff and all of the fictional brand work and all of the UI and the way that all of those things are interconnected. I had not played the original Wipeout trilogy on the PS1 at that point. I was not familiar with the Designers Republic. I had not considered graphic design as a career choice. I was like 13 or something. I certainly had not played the weird one with Wipeout Fusion on PS2. Weirdly, I had probably played Quantum Redshift at that point, and that is secretly Wipeout 4. That's a long story. That game's a mess, but I forget who it was. Somebody did a really, really good write-up on that recently, doing a deep dive into the development history on it.
Right, that's like the Xbox Wipeout, right?
Yeah, it maybe the worst key art of all time. I believe Hillary Goldstein at IGN accidentally put his review up with the byline, or not byline, but I think the headline said Quantum Redshit at first, and then pulled it back down, fixed it, and put it back up. Anyway.
Yeah, it's developed by former Psygnosis staff. That a lot of that would go on and be formed into Studio Liverpool, which goes back to your, the game that you mentioned there, but Quantum Redshift.
It's a thing that existed.
Right, yeah.
I can say that much about it, certainly. So Psygnosis, when Sony bought them, they went from being a huge prolific developer and publisher of their own to being Sony Studio Liverpool. That went on for a while, and then they were shut down. But before all that happened,
tales old as time.
Yeah, exactly right. At this point, just if someone's buying your company, just run. Just start running.
We're valuable. Everybody, double down.
Hooray!
Double down now. Yeah.
Man, but yeah, that game was the thing that kind of bonked me on the head with a roofing hammer and opened me up to the idea of this is something that someone did as a job. This is a thing that you can do for a living. Mm-hmm. And that is just not something that I considered before at all. Wipeout Pure is just intensely compelling to me in a lot of different ways, and was definitely one of the big catalysts for me, I guess, in sending me down this deep, dark road.
Were there other games that you were trying to pursue after playing Wipeout Pure that try to scratch that itch or try to get learn more about this medium?
I'm trying to think of what happened after that. What did I start finding later on? I couldn't tell you the order of operations here, but at some point start discovering things like Ridge Racer Type 4, internal section, res, every weird thing on the Dreamcast. I guess N, the Flash 2D platformer that then N Plus got a PSP release, and then N Plus Plus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are other games that have used similar graphic techniques and lean really hard on 45-degree angles and clean vectors and all that stuff. I mean, Halo did. That was something that my art director would jokingly give me shit for a lot at Bungie while working on Destiny. Is I would just instinctively throw a bunch of 45-degree angles into things because I grew up playing a lot of Halo, and he's like, "That's wrong game. We don't make that anymore."
Yeah. So this puts you towards the path of video game development. You're bringing all these influences with you, like Ridge Racer Type 4, and then Wipeout Pure, Halo to critique even. Do you remember that journey of being able to get to a place like Bungie, for example?
No, dude, I Tokyo drifted into this thing sideways on accident.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and like I don't know any other way to do it at this point. And like that's coming from a cishet white guy. Like, you know, uh, even for me, it was just the like one day I was here somehow. I don't really know how that came together. Like I think the closest thing that I had to like video game industry job experience before working in the video game industry was I worked at Wizards of the Coast as a contractor for like a year.
Mhm.
That's about it. But what happened and how I found myself at Bungie was I started following other kind of games industry adjacent graphic designers, I guess, like other designers that I met through like Twitter or whatever that were either literally working in the industry or were kind of like on the outskirts of it and, you know, were occasionally being like contracted to do like a piece of apparel or like an illustration or something, but they weren't in-house somewhere or being, you know, gainfully employed in a way that would be sustainable. Like they were still working a day job that was somewhere else, myself included. I think, yeah. So before Bungie, I was at Alaska Airlines for about 2 years. That was actually the bloodiest layoff that I ever experienced, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Desperately evil people at the top of that thing. But
Mhm.
if I can be subtle,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
but
Totally.
yeah. Anyway, Famicase is an event that happens once a year through I guess you'd call it like a little art museum exhibit type thing, pop up. I don't know. In Japan called Meteor Club, and every year they put on an exhibit called Famicase, where just I think it's 250 designers submit their own, you know, fictional, imaginary Famicom cartridge design. I started meeting a lot of people through that after getting involved there because there's no like application process or, you know, qualifying laps or anything like that. It's just straight up the first 250 people to email the design in the door, get in. And I did that for a couple of years and got to know, again, just other designers in and around the industry through that. We all kind of found each other that way and formed a weird little, like, it was loose, not even collective, not even circle, just like, I don't know, we would hang out on Twitter and stuff. Like, it's not formal by any means.
Mhm. A tight-knit group chat.
I guess, but like all out in the open. Like,
Yeah.
it was just I you know, just developing friendships with people throughout the industry over the course of a couple of years while working outside of it, and like not really thinking that there would be a place for me and my skill set and background and stuff in here anywhere that I would be able to realistically find, right? And then one day I got a DM from someone that I knew at Bungie who was just like, "Hey, I'm moving to another team. Do you want a job?" And I was like, what? Is that how that works? And he was like, it works however you want it to work. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay. I still had to go through the whole like interview process and everything, but that's kind of how that happened. It was just a mysterious DM appears out of nowhere and it's just like, hey, there's going to be an opening on this team. You know, do you want to take a crack at it or whatever? So I don't have a good answer for you. It just kind of
No, I mean, that's a very thorough and detailed one, and it's a very illuminating because, like, that's, you know, engaging in the community is a very important part of this kind of thing. I'm not trying to be cynical and be like, network with people and only be around people that you want to be, like anything like that. Just the actual,
people can
like,
smell that a mile away too. Like, don't be that person, you know, like
if you're a sincere person working in a field and like you make sincere connections with people, you're going to be remembered.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just like literally just be normal. Just hang out. Like just be chill.
Be
It's
normal,
fine.
be enthusiastic, and be a nice ass fucking person.
But like not in a weird way, you know? You don't have to be like I get like marginal red flags sometimes when people are like aggressively positive online all the time to the point where it's like, are you I don't know. I don't
Sure.
it's not that I'm
Yeah.
making assumptions about their intent or whatever. It's just anyway. Don't go the other way too far, I guess.
I know what you mean. The kindness versus niceness sort of thing. I get it.
Yeah, totally. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're putting out there. Making this about video games more specifically again, you know, as a person who's worked in graphic design, a person who works in music composition, what are your influences?
Oh man. I mean, a lot of the things that I'm inspired by most visually are I pull a lot from like older consumer electronic hardware design for
Mhm.
for 2D visual art, which is maybe weird, but I find a lot of exciting ideas in the visual language of devices that were like designed first and foremost to be interacted with by a person. We're kind of at a point now where the functions of all of the different things that we used to carry around with us on the reg, at least, you know, for a short time in the early digital age or whatever have largely been consolidated into a single black rectangle.
Right.
But something about the way that fulfilling a lot of those same tasks happens on a phone just feels weirdly nefarious a little bit, just because, even if it's not, like, not even in like a paranoid way, but in the like, because I know that every little thing that I do is being tracked and like data is being gathered by every input or whatever. Like I've worked in marketing long enough, basically, is what I'm saying, to know that like how to know the kind of data that is collected from phones and stuff. And that's not to be like, that hasn't like sent me, running off the grid or whatever. Like my phone is still sitting here on the desk in front of me, but it's like there's something much more interesting to me about things like, cameras and music players and stuff like that were designed to be used by a person not connected to the internet, and the device itself is the product as opposed to the information that the product can gather, I guess, if that makes sense.
Right. I mean, like, this was like Sony's bread and butter throughout like the
Totally,
90s
yeah.
and
I was trying really
2000s
hard not to
especially.
just like be like, yeah, all the Sony's weird blobjack stuff from Y2K era, like.
It's being called the biggest fucking waste of your hard-earned money to come along in years. Sony's new stupid box thing hit the shelves at crowded malls and overpriced electronics stores around the country today.
It's got a whole bunch more memory and megapixels and whatnot than any of the other TV shit that I already have. I can't wait to get home and spend my whole fucking night trying to figure the goddamn thing out.
Yeah, like there was a period of time where, there's the proliferation of the BlackBerry and everything, which is very well told through that.
Oh gosh, yeah,
movie
they made
came
that
out last year. Yeah, but the Nirvana the band, the show guys, making a biopic about the BlackBerry. That was actually
them.
Yeah, yeah.
Jeez, okay.
It's good. It's actually a good movie. But there's that stuff like, PDAs and, like you said, digital cameras and everything like that. Single use technology that doesn't connect to some like bigger server. So like the data on it can be collected and pictures of your family can be stored in some device somewhere. To that point, smart TVs. Let's talk about this, right? The reason that smart TVs are relatively inexpensive compared to how TVs used to traditionally be expensive isn't just because like, they've streamlined the technology and everything's flat now. It's because those smart TVs, like the Roku's inside of them or the Google TV, have the parameters that are on when you activate those devices. It's all permissions for data sharing. And like that data is considered so valuable for them that like they will pay like a lot of the upfront costs that come with making the TV. And the consumer gets a cheaper TV because they're providing such valuable data to them. So it's this really, like even if you turn on your TV, you're doing something, doing something nefarious.
Yeah, that's like listening to music, even if you're using like a local digital library or whatever. It's like my Music Bee app is still theoretically connected to Last FM. I don't know when anyone has checked Last FM last, but like theoretically people could still see whatever it is I'm listening to even locally on my machine here or whatever, and like that's not that big of a deal, all things considered. It's just, it feels weird to just feel constantly observed, and like my own, I don't know, media intake and stuff is being like publicly documented. Just feels weird.
Sure, the harsh normalization of the surveillance in post 9/11.
No, totally.
We can go totally dark with this episode. We've talked about everything
absolutely.
else.
We're slowly sliding that way anyway.
Yeah. Watch hypernormalization.
Yeah, before we talk about this beautifully utopian weird video game. But anyway, yeah, I derive a lot of just inspiration and weird ideas and stuff from just things that were designed to be used by people, as well as the obvious stuff like when you're doing UI for a video game, you've played other video games and like
Maybe.
you've interacted
Who's
with
asking?
them, probably. Who told you? Yeah, you can't help but pull from things that you have experienced in the past when you are making new things. Like that's art. Like all art is building on all other art, right? Like it's inherently like all art is a giant cosmic exquisite corpse in some manner. But
yeah, that's why I think video game design patents are so stupid. But continue.
Yeah. Again, yeah. What are we talking about?
You were talking about your artistic influences.
Right. Yeah,
we got there.
I mean, like there are plenty of like way too many games to list that have just things going on with their like whole visual identity and stuff that are just like super exciting and inspiring to me, that are just kind of like living in my brain at all times. This is weird, but I pull a lot from music, both music that exists and from like music production, like my audio production and like workflow and my like Photoshop and Illustrator workflow are very, very similar. completely different tools, but I end up using them in very similar ways, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, totally.
So they end up informing each other. I find myself transposing auditory and visual, abstractions or whatever, just flipping them back and forth on each other all the time.
Gee, I wonder what video game inspired that.
Yeah, weird, right? Go to synesthesia. But yeah, everything. Like, I think if you are a creative professional of any kind, or just someone that wants to art goodly, I cannot stress enough the importance of just exposing yourself to as much as possible and from as broad a range of sources as possible, in terms of, different media and where it comes from. I've been trying to slow this down in this last calendar year, to allow myself to try to remember how to sleep every so often, but I used to just watch a movie roughly every night. So I was hitting like 300-400 movies a year kind of thing. Just trying to put as much stuff in my eyes and ears as possible, I guess.
Right. Like, you're trying to find influences. You're trying to look and see what's been done and see how you can filter that through your own form of artistic expression. It's not the cynical way of people who just consume for the sake of consuming, but to just listen and pay attention to what is in front of you.
Yeah, I can't help but study stuff.
Yeah.
If I'm being actually honest with myself about it, I think the majority of my interest in games is academic. I don't know, for whatever reason, like, that's the thing that is, I think, like, at the top level of my, like, interest and compulsion, is just studying the ways that all of these different types of artistic disciplines and media forms come together in a format that's inherently interactive, and the ways in which it is given that interactivity. That is an infinitely deep trench to dive down, should one want to do so.
One of the joys of working on this podcast is just getting a more detailed and immersive, not immersive, I guess. Well, in this game's case, immersive, but a more detailed and actually like purposeful look into the stuff that I'm playing and try to understand it on more than just the interactive level, but like the intentionality of the thing and what philosophies and principles went into designing this thing. And then it really makes, when you do play a game on a more casual like setting, make you appreciate those things more, and also gives more a better vocabulary for when something isn't fulfilling in the way that another game might be. You also compose music. What are your favorite video game composers and video game soundtracks?
Oh man, that's such a gigantic question that I've never known how to actually answer. Because again, that list is so very long. I really love weirdos, like people like Kota Hoshino over at From Software. He's been there for ever and ever and ever, and has a long history of just being a big old weirdo in terms of the way that he makes music. Him and both Kota Hoshino and Tsukasa Saito, both of them over there, like throughout the modern day like Souls era FromSoft stuff, they've been much more traditional in their output, working with like Motoi Sakuraba and stuff like that. But in like the PS1, PS2 days, they were getting really wild and experimental. Like, I know the Evergrey soundtrack is a meme now, but the reason that thing sounds so weird is because it's being played live by the PS2's sound hardware. Like, it's not a Redbook audio type situation. It's a lot of weird effects being recreated on the fly by the PlayStation 2's actual like chipset. Made by a dude that didn't know how to like, I don't remember if it was just that he'd never used a DAW before or something like that. I don't remember what the story was, but it was...
Yeah, he can't read music is the thing.
Oh, that's what, okay. Yeah. I mean, I haven't had to since like junior high or whatever, so I'm sure I probably can't realistically say that I can either at this point, but people like that, or, soundtracks like the first Drakengard soundtrack is made up of a lot of like recordings of like royalty-free orchestral arrangements of classical music and stuff that they just chopped up into a bunch of weird samples and made something that sounds like a weird burning digital hell. And it's just extremely cool and fits the weird kind of fever dream nature of that game very well. And then there's, people that just have been making extremely good, cool, impressive work for their whole lives. People like Motoi Sakuraba or Yuzo Koshiro or whatever, but like there's a very, very long list of composers and their various works. But I mean, like that's kind of what it comes down to, is I'm less concerned with the individual games, soundtracks, or series or whatever than I am with the people behind them and what they made. That's generally my approach with a lot of art in general. Is I'm much less concerned with or interested in like IPs or whatever than I am with people that make stuff. Okay, like I played Shovel Knight because I heard Manami Matsume did a bunch of music on it. Like that's stuff like that. Like I will seek out people's work. I'll find composers I like and see like, oh, they did some weird like download only 3DS game that was only distributed in like South Korea for 3 months or something like that. And it's like, all right, well, maybe there's a ROM of it somewhere in some dusty corner of the internet. Fire up and like start to study and explore this thing.
You mentioned these games in consoles that you grew up with, the Nintendo 64, the Xbox, the PlayStation Portable being like stuffy around the Game Boy Color even. What would you say your favorite console is?
It's probably the Xbox, but the Saturn is close behind it.
What about the Saturn?
Just the whole library, its whole vibe. I don't know, its whole ethos. I have fallen more in love with the library of the Saturn over time than any other console. I think that I didn't have when it was contemporary, if that makes sense.
Totally.
I think the Saturn has been the biggest like retroactive goldmine for me over many, many years. Like I'm still discovering awesome new stuff all the time in there with my extremely, extremely limited Japanese. It really just, learn hiragana and katakana, and that's usually enough to open up at least like you can navigate menus now, right?
That
that's
looks
a good
like pause.
yeah, exactly. It's like I know 3 of those 5 characters. I think I know what that is. Yeah, that's like I think that's the audio settings. But the Saturn's just incredible. That's such that's a case where because it was comparatively such a flop here in the States, but it was massive at home in Japan and has a gigantic software library. I mean, there are apps on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
There are all kinds of wild like attempts at weird interactive multimedia and stuff like that, but also just a lot of really cool, really experimental games that were done by people with virtuosic skill sets and all of these incredible ideas, and they were still in a time where they could do that stuff quickly and it wasn't terribly expensive necessarily, even if the hardware was a giant pain in the butt to do anything particularly bold with, I guess. But it was a space where people were experimenting a lot with design instead. And there's just a lot of wild, weird stuff on the Saturn that I love a lot.
Yeah, I asked about it, just not in like an interrogative way, but just because this is a console that means a lot to the people who have played with its library, but it's not a console that's been shouted out a lot on this show. And I just wanted to get a perspective on that because it is an underappreciated console, and I've been hearing a lot of people talk about it lately broadly, and I just like to hear about that kind of stuff because not every failure is a Virtual Boy where it's just kind of like, oh, this is a console that hurts to use. Especially now that's the 25th anniversary of the Dreamcast, people have been reflecting on like how incredible of a console that was, just a bit out of place in time. And Sega was just in a weird place financially and marketing and business wise that it really didn't know how to do fulfill a worldwide niche. And to your point about the Saturn, like, that was a console that was successful in Japan. Like it hit all the numbers it needed to in Japan and had hundreds of games in Japan, but famously one of the most botched launches when it came stateside that we just, as Americans, do not know much about it unless you actually do an intentional deep dive into its history.
Yeah, they had their 9/5/95 set up for their launch day. And then 3 months ahead of that, they were like, actually, what if we did it right now? And then everyone that was trying to make launch games was like, what?
Not just that, but like that's a thing. That is a move that just hurts your distributors. Like that is something that like your distributors do not like you anymore, and we will not hold the
there's
software.
Not going to carry and sell your product at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even death by 1,000 cuts. It's like the Saturn in the US was death by 1,000 like falling guillotines, self-inflicted. But yeah, far and away Sega's biggest hardware success at home for sure. It's kind of like the inverse of the Genesis over here. The Mega Drive was not nearly as successful over there, to the point that like common Genesis games over here, their Japanese counterparts are now like cartoonishly expensive. Now it's very strange, but the Saturn is very much the opposite. It was huge over there, and if there was a game that was released in America on the Saturn or in Europe or PAL territories and stuff, there's usually a significantly cheaper Japanese copy that may or may not be in Japanese.
Yeah. Can you shout out a couple of particular favorites on the Saturn library?
Oh, geez. Man, Baroque, every shooter, every STG. Let's see. One Gun Dead Heat, Shitoku Battle 97, Shining the Holy Ark. What have I don't even, such a long, there's also a lot of just like really cool, weird, interesting ports on there of things that you wouldn't necessarily have expected otherwise. Like the port of Quake on the Saturn is fascinating. Like there's just all kinds of weird things there. That's where Tomb Raider started. That's still the only Tomb Raider game that I actively like is the original Saturn version of the first one.
Wild.
Just because it's so quiet and spooky and atmospheric, and that game feels haunted. Kind of runs like crap, which is cool.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I don't know, man. The Saturn has such a gigantic library. But yeah, especially if you're into anything arcadey at all, whether that's shooters or stuff like, elevator action or whatever. There's a lot. There's a lot.
Oh yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot of treasure games. There's a lot of RPGs. There's a lot of
I played the remake of Panzer Dragoon a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
And that made me want to look more into that series specifically. And I've been really meaning and hoping for some easier way to play Panzer Dragoon Saga specifically because it looks like a very specific, I'll say, kind of RPG.
Yeah, I was going to get into Panzer Dragoon at some point during this recording just because it's so directly leads to Rez. But yeah, for anyone at home that may not know, Panzer Dragoon was a short-lived series from Sega developed by an internal team called Team Andromeda. They created an entire fictional language for this world that has since been used in like random movies and stuff. It's very strange the way these things work out. Anyway,
yeah,
it's a rail shooter. It is an arcade rail shooter where you're sitting on top of a dragon and you have your character has a little like handheld weapon essentially that can either fire little projectiles or you can hold it down and kind of paint the cursor across the screen to lock on to targets, and then you let go and it will send out homing shots to the targets that you had locked on, which is also the case for Rez, as we'll get to later. The difference is in Panzer Dragoon, you also can use the shoulder buttons to rotate the camera 90 degrees around to deal with enemies in your vicinity.
Yeah,
I like that first game a lot. I think Panzer Dragoon Zwei, the second one, is an actual masterpiece. That's another game I could sit here and sing the praises of all day. And then I finally got around to playing through Saga, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, something like that. But yeah, that game is impossibly expensive, so I just burned those to some CDRs, and then I ripped those CDRs to a Polymega, and then played through it that way. People talk about that game with such hyperbole that I'm very like nervous about opening my mouth about it, but I've never played anything quite like Panzer Dragoon Saga. I adore that game. I really, really loved it. It's so clever and creative and innovative and interesting, and very, very obvious why it was just a gigantic money fire. It's like, oh, you spent so much on this, and there is no amount of, like, even if you put this out on a console that people had and put a ton of marketing money behind it and didn't ship 15,000 copies in the United States, more than that, it probably still would not have ever made its budget back. But it is a really, really impressive work. It is a monumental thing, and I like it a lot. And again, music is unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely we'll spend more time talking about Panzer Dragoon because it is, again, inextricably linked with the production of Rez there. Before we talk about today's main event, Rez, which is the game that means the most to you, tell us about some other games that mean a lot to you. You referenced a couple of them, for example, the Panzer Dragoon games and the Wipeout game. But what else is there?
Yeah, again, the entire Ridge Racer series is hugely formative for me. Kind of the first thing that I put out on the internet that allowed me to that spread enough that I was able to meet people and stuff and find my way into various social circles or whatever it was. In 2018, I put out a record that was basically what if Ridge Racer Type 4 had more music that wasn't as good. And I guess there were enough other people in the world that were looking for that kind of thing. There is a remaster of that in the works from Brave Wave at the moment, but I don't know what the status is timeline-wise, other than eventually, because that album was mastered on headphones on a laptop on the bus while I was commuting. Dark times. Anyway, but racing games in general are huge for me, as well as shooters and horror games and stuff like that. But I really deeply appreciate a well-designed action game. I don't know. I love me a Shinobi 3. I love me a Castlevania Rondo of Blood. I love everything that Joy Masher has put out, which Danilo Dias in Brazil and other people that he works with. But he's an indie dev that's just been making... I don't think he knows how good he is, but he's put out recently, he's like Oniken, Blazing Chrome, Vengeful Guardian Moonrider. I think the last few, I feel like each new release that he puts out is like a little bit bigger publicity or whatever, but...
This is Joy Masher.
Yes, Blazing Chrome is one of the best modern Contra games, and one of the best Contra games, period, I think. Vengeful Guardian Moonrider is like somewhere between Shinobi and like Hagane. Just really, really clever, very carefully, thoughtfully tuned games that are very, like, you can feel how intently considered they are as you play them. And Danilo Diaz is standing on the same shoulders of giants that we all are in a sense, but I think he's also up there windmill dunking while the rest of us are standing. If that makes sense. Like, I don't know. I just think that dude is making really excellent modern old video games. I don't know if he knows how good they are. Anyway, I was thinking about that because I just started thinking about old Konami stuff in the 8 and 16-bit era. I was thinking about your Contras and Castlevania.
Right, a guy who saw that Konami no longer wants to make games and was like, fine, I'll do it myself. Fuck, yeah. Jesus, all right.
And he knocked it out of the park, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much more interested in cool games than good games. I think most good games kind of suck ass. We're deep enough in the recording time now, right, that I can just start making a fool of myself.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, no, I think most good video games are super, super boring. I would take a God Hand over don't want to get myself in trouble. Insert any, super polished, expensive AAA game of the last, since God Hand, any day of the week.
Your weirdo Xenogears kind of things, your Chrono Crosses, your God Hand, great example of just like people trying something, throwing at the wall, obviously running out of money and shipping it, versus like, all right, this took 6 years and you'll like it, but will you remember it?
Yeah, I mean, like my favorite studios, aside from who I'm mostly into their weird stuff, because of course I'm nothing if not a walking parody of myself, but my other two in my personal big three are Genki and Kavia. The entire history of creative output from my favorite studios has been like janky and busted and weird and messed up, but they have a lot of heart and weird ideas, and I like when weird ideas don't work. I don't know. I like a big swing. You don't have to connect to the ball. That's like the 15th baseball metaphor here today. I don't know what's going on, but
it was a very impressive swing. We love the way that he swings.
Yeah.
Maybe one day he'll hit something. We've talked about all sorts of strange subjects: sad, funny, absurd. We've talked about the good, bad, and the weird. Let's talk about the incredible, the singular. Let's talk about the game that you picked today, Rez. Rez is a musical rail shooter combining elements from games like Panzer Dragoon and Space Channel 5. Like those games, Rez was published by Sega. This is the third Sega game we've covered on the show. Previously, we discussed Sonic Adventure 2 and Jet Grind Radio, also known as Jet Set Radio, both of which were originally released for the Dreamcast. And this game is no different. Rez was developed by Sega subsidiary United Game Artists. United Game Artists was a Shibuya, Tokyo-based studio led by video game producer Tetsuya Mitsuguchi. Mitsuguchi had been working with Sega since 1990 as an arcade cabinet designer and produced Sega Rally Championship, Sega Touring Car Championship, and Sega Rally 2.
Everything that dude touches is gold.
I have so many notes on this man because he is certainly one of a kind.
Yeah, Miz is incredible. I love that dude.
Yeah, during a trip to Zurich, Switzerland, Mitsuguchi attended a music festival and was moved by the relationship he observed between the attendees and the music and lights. Believing this to be synesthesia, the phenomenon of sensory crossovers like feeling sound or having visual associations with sound, Mitsuguchi's interest shifted from racing games to music and rhythm games. This led to his team developing Space Channel 5 as well as its sequel Space Channel 5 Part 2, which was developed concurrently with today's game, Rez. After a company restructure in 2003, United Game Artists was dissolved and its employees were transferred to Sonic Team. Mitsuguchi left Sega the following month, becoming an independent developer. He would go on to co-produce a variety of games, including the Lumines series, 99 Nights, and 2018's Tetris Effect. But Mitsuguchi wasn't the only creative force behind Rez. Rez was directed by Jun Kobayashi, and its programming director was Mitsuru Takahashi. Hiroyuki Abe and Katsuhiko Yamada were the game's designers. And Katsumi Yokota was the game's art director and lead artist. This particular game was a major departure from Yokota's previous work on Panzer Dragoon Saga, which was striving for the highest realism possible on the Sega Saturn. Rez's art design, however, is more deliberately abstract, using wireframe graphics more familiar in older video game titles, especially 80s arcade games like Missile Command. This style was used in all but one level of the game. Making the graphics reflect the music was inspired by the Winamp media player. There are cathedrals everywhere with eyes to see, or whatever.
Shout out to Jeff Minter.
One of the principal influences on Rez is the works of Russian painter and theorist Vasily Kandinsky, who was an artist who believed that art is a communion between the senses and the mind. And his synesthetic approach to art was foundational to the developers of Rez. Keiichi Sugiyama is credited as the game's sound creator and contributed the music for the game's first level. As a music-driven experience, lead artist Yokota worked closely with Sugiyama in order to create an audio-visual experience to create the immersive and synesthetic effect that they wanted to achieve. The team settled on techno, as it made the ability to isolate individual notes of music more simple and natural to the experience. A DJ named Ibizu was brought on for music coordination in order to help achieve the call and response methods of the interactive form, aiding in matching the visuals to the music. Multiple electronic artists were contacted to provide music for the game, including Aphex Twin, The Chemical Brothers, Fatboy Slim, and Underworld. No agreements were made with these particular artists. Underworld, in particular, was contacted for the use of their track Rez in the opening level, which was tested at the game that they were like messing around with as like a temp music for the opening level. And Underworld said no, because they did not want to be associated with a game that involved shooting things. So Rez couldn't get Rez. This is why Sugiyama ended up creating his own track for the opening level. The final game includes levels set to music by Kenichi Shaojuka, Cold Cut, and Adam Freeland, who either contributed original tracks or licensed remixes of their tracks. Cold Cut and Tim Brand from British electronic group Dead Zone composed the final boss theme. 2 tracks from German electronic group Oval were used, as well as a track from Ibizu, the DJ brought on during development. Gameplay has the player float on rails through levels, manually firing and locking on up to 8 targets at a time. Impact syncs with the backing track, creating more musical layers. The shots are also fed back to the player via the controller's vibration functionality. A custom controller, I have to talk about this, a custom controller called the Trance Vibrator was developed by the team that was compatible. Hello. He has the Trance Vibrator, folks.
I brought visual aids, folks.
Yeah, visual aids. This is an
audio medium.
Yeah, exclusively audio, but he has the Trance Vibrator, and I'm so impressed right now. Custom controller called the Trance Vibrator, which was developed by the team that was compatible with the PS2 version of the game. The idea behind it was that while the vibration functionality of the controllers did give good feedback, it was also limited to the hands of the players. The aim of the Trance controller was to allow the player to place it somewhere else on their body and feel the vibrations there.
Just leave that part up to you.
So, I wanted to include this excerpt from a GameIndustry.biz interview with Mizuguchi that talks about the Trance Vibrator in more detail. This is interviewer Rob Fahey. On the topic of Rez, the Rez Trance Vibrator, whose idea was that? Mitsuguchi. And that was kind of a joke, but a very serious joke. No sexual meaning. We always listen to music by ear, and you can watch the visuals moving. The dynamics in Rez, so it's kind of a cross-sensation feeling. But we design vibrations, not body sonic types, the motion itself, like the visual or sound effects, which were very complicated or three-dimensional, a sensational expression or experience. I wanted to make that. Of course you can get a good vibration effect from the controller. But not only this, but on other parts of your body. Get a good vibration with the music, the motion design, hands and the other parts moving each other. Like this with the music. We thought this might be fun. Interviewer. Where are you meant to put it when you're playing? Mitsuguchi. So I like to feel the vibrations with my feet. So I think it's the feet and the hands. It's a good balance. Some people bite them. I think that's very dangerous, actually.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Gonna rattle some fillings loose.
He's really talking around the trans controller, but he was like insistent that it wasn't sexual and he likes it with his feet.
Oh,
What a guy.
Poor Miz. Yeah, I've heard people insist that like, no, you're supposed to just like kind of put it under your leg, like under your knee where you're sitting. Like, I don't know, man. Like,
it comes with a cover.
It does actually. It's like it's more of a little like carrying case. It looks like something that would come with like cheap headphones or something. It's weird. Something that Miz has always been obsessed with was the like ways in which you could use games to make a bunch of sensory inputs start to crash into each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the big moments that I know he's talked about that like kicked that off for him was playing, I think it was G-Lock Air Battle in one of those big R360 machines or whatever. The short-lived Sega arcade cabinet that's like a cockpit inside a gyroscope and you're swinging around all over the place and it's not actually fast enough to keep up with where your motion is in the game, so it's not really one-to-one with what you're doing, but like the idea is there. One of those situations. Anyway, I guess he encountered that and then just like walked over to Sega HQ and just like kicked the door open and was like, I would like to make a video game, please. I would like to do one of these.
He strikes me as the kind of guy where like you read the journals for the Metal Gear Solid games and like it's Hideo Kojima writing like, I pitched a concept of a controller that makes a smell and you're supposed to smell it and it's a smell that's happening that in game, right. Or some other thing where it's like, I tried to pitch the concept.
Yeah.
I tried to pitch the concept of a game that makes you bleed and everybody said no. And then like over in Sega's Mitsuguchi going like, yeah, I did that today. I made it happen for real.
I just did it. I didn't ask first. That's the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this is Blood 2. The first one killed a lot of people, but this one seems to test well with audiences.
Oh, I thought you meant like Monolith's Blood 2.
Sorry, I forgot that there's basically every title possible done with video games already.
Yeah, that's all right. That just Monolith's Blood 2 is already its own kind of long-term walking punchline at this point. But yeah.
Yeah, moving on to talking about Rez's story.
Yes.
Rez is a story mostly conveyed visually. There's very little dialogue, very little text. It's an experience more so than a narrative by design.
Yeah.
However, the how to play section has some story text before you enter the first level of the game to give you some amount of context. And it reads as follows. The world has become massively overpopulated. The rapidly expanding network society has been crippled by rising crime rates and is on the verge of meltdown.
Big fears in 2000.
Yeah. A new system, Project K, has been created in an attempt to resolve the situation. At the core of the system is an artificial intelligence center named Eden. Eden has more advanced AI than any machine that has ever previously existed. It has the ability to process vast amounts of information at once, and to use that information to form its own uniquely advanced independent thoughts. Some would say that Eden has even developed a degree of conscience. However, Eden became confused when the flow of information being sent to it began to greatly increase in speed and volume. It started to question the meaning of its existence and the consequences of its actions. Finding itself surrounded by paradoxes and realizing the power of autonomy it possessed, Eden began to shut itself down.
Been there, buddy.
Now you are about to travel into the cyberspace of Project K network on a mission to reawaken Eden. You must gain access to each area and layer level of the system, destroying any viruses and firewalls you encounter. Open your senses. And shenanigans ensue. Yeah, so this is a game about an AI that is terminally online and has brain rot because of it, and it's like, I'm going to go to bed now. It's doom scrolling the video game. I don't want to be around anymore, etc., etc.
Yeah, it is a thin framework upon which to hang a video game. It contributes to the kind of like overall mood and like philosophy and kind of like techno hippie vibes a little bit of Rez, but it's not at all a thing that is important to the experience necessarily.
Yeah, you don't need a thing, know a thing about the story to get everything out of this game. Yeah,
exactly.
Rez was originally released in Japan in 2001 before releasing in North America and Europe in 2002. Other video games released in 2002 include The Elder Scrolls III: Morrowind, Eternal Darkness, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Jet Set Radio Future, Kingdom Hearts, Super Mario Sunshine, Time Splitters 2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. Also, Metroid Prime, which I previously covered on the show with Mark Normandin, and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which I previously covered with Riley Hopkins. 2002, no shortage of good games that year. what of all the games that you've ever played, because you have quite a diverse array of experiences when it comes to the games that you've played, what ultimately made you settle on Rez?
So Rez is something that I've not actually talked about a whole lot over the years, despite loving it as much as I do. And I think it's just too close. I think a big reason I've not talked about Rez a whole lot over the years is because I don't feel like I could do it justice without putting together an entire thesis about it. Like actual academic, get your doctorate's degree kind of thesis about I don't know that I can talk about any of Rez without talking about all of Rez, which is why I just don't tend to bring it up all that much necessarily. But now, after going through a few episodes of this show and you talking me down off the ledge, I was like, okay, all right, I don't have to be all super formal. I don't have to come in armed with a bunch of research and fresh information in my brain or anything like that. So I'm just going to try and keep it chill.
It's sensation. It's about the feeling of the thing,
Exactly.
not the objective reality of the thing.
Yeah, man. Some real stoned at Denny's philosophy hours.
Smoking on that shit that made me Rez out.
For sure. Rez is my favorite thing. It's my favorite game, but it's my favorite work. It's my favorite media feels like such a weird consumery term now. It's almost become content-ified in that sense, but Rez is just my favorite piece of media, I guess. I don't know if you want to put it that way. And I think the reason that I feel comfortable saying that is because it has been something that has held true for a very, very long time, since the HD release on the 360, actually.
Nope, and he held up a copy of that.
Played it, yeah, the cubed collection with every Extend, Extra, Extreme, and Luminous Live on there. I don't know, it's 3 damn good video games on a disc that you can't buy on Xbox Live anymore.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Yes, we will. But yeah, since I first actually got my hands on it on 360, that game has been a just powerful force of just constant, not just inspiration, but just creative rejuvenation, I think, in my life. Last night, I went back and played through the Dreamcast port for the first time in a long time.
Held up the Dreamcast version of the game, everybody.
It's become a running bit now across different shows where I just bring a bunch of shit up to my desk and just pull it up to the camera while I'm talking, even though no one can see it other than
it's
the person I'm
talking to. It's great.
Yeah,
exactly. I have to remark on it.
Yeah. They call him the Gallagher of podcasts. But it's...
But you were playing through the Dreamcast port.
And it's something that I don't do a lot because it is much harder. And I don't think the game is actually different. I think it's just because the performance is so slow and the Dreamcast stick is so resistant and the throw is so wide. So it's a lot less sensitive. So you're just having to crank that thing all the way to the edge all the time. After 2 levels, my thumb starts to get sore playing the Dreamcast port of that game. But it had been a while and I wanted to revisit it in its actual original form, before we talked about it today. That was kind of the only actual prep that I did. That and I fired up with Child of Eden again for a little bit earlier today, but we'll get to that, I assume, as well. But
we will.
Yeah, Rez has been a huge creative force in my life for many, many years. And I know it's no longer cool or whatever because it's readily available and has become a thing that I imagine any given individual port of Rez Infinite probably sold better than every other copy of, every other version of Rez that has ever shipped. I have no numbers to back that up other than just a gut feeling.
Yeah.
It just seems like something that has become much more, it's aged really well because it's just clean vector lines, you don't have to worry about goofy looking textures or anything like that. So the visual aesthetic has remained really clean and it upscales to higher resolutions very, very effortlessly. And the gameplay is strong enough and simplistic enough that still just works the same now as it did when it came out. So it's just one of those things that is very easy to introduce to new people still, I think, which has helped it, I think, become I think also Tetris Effect probably gave it a good kick of kind of popularity by proxy a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad that it is a thing now that more people have found joy out of. But it's just been such a piece of bedrock for me as a person with weird art brain for so very long. I feel similarly about Alien as my favorite movie. Another thing where it's it's probably not a cool answer or whatever anymore, but if it ever was, but it's one of those things where I'm is that really my favorite thing? And then I sit down with it. I'm oh yeah, no, nothing else kind of gives me this very specific sensation.
Yeah, I mean, Alien's perfect. And Res is different thing, right? But
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons. But I understand like you like saying like it feels obvious to say for whatever reason, but there is a truth behind it. Res is a game that is like so pure and simple, and I wouldn't say simple. I think it's obviously doing a lot visually through simplicity, I should say. But there's like something so like pure and experiential about it that one, it can make that difficult to talk about, but it is also immediately evocative. And it's also something that lends itself to how well it has aged and endured over the years. I was somebody who played it for the first time last week, and it has stuck with me and resonated with me. And it feels very modern in design and sensibility, despite all that. Like, it's this weird thing where it's like, this feels like it was made specifically for the Dreamcast, but it also feels very modern at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is a testament to the galaxy brain nature of the Dreamcast developers, and also like how thoughtful this small team of developers was in trying to create an experience. Because I didn't talk about this with Mitsuguchi in the introduction, but he was somebody who wanted casual players, people who had not really played with a lot of video games before, be able to play these games. Like the Kojima comparison is much different, because that was a guy who was like is a guy who's very concerned with pushing the boundaries of the form to the point of like creating an alienating experience to somebody. It'd be a very weird game to play for your first time, but if Res was your first video game ever, it would be pretty intuitive, and it wouldn't be overwhelming, and it would like speak to the appeal of the form because of how pure and expressive it is without demanding too much out of you.
Yeah, I mean, when he joined Sega, he was not someone that had a huge background in games. Like, he has mentioned a number of times, like, he didn't have a console in the house growing up or anything like that. He just saw the kind of novelty of what could be done. I think really he just went to arcades and his brain just started, like, the wheels started turning. He started thinking of like all of the different things that you could theoretically do with interactive art. That's why he was one of the first people at messing with those early Sega VR prototypes that were like a Game Gear LCD panel on each eye, and then just a bunch of like exposed circuit boards on the back, because they were just weird prototypes at like CES or whatever it was in the early 90s. But they're really crappy early VR thing that they were trying to pursue. I know that's something that he was very interested in as well. And he's always talked about Res being designed from the beginning to be a VR game, effectively, even though that wasn't like a thing that they could do at the time.
Right.
He was trying to do the closest thing he could effectively to that. So when Res Infinite comes out in 17, 18, somewhere in there?
16.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at me. The Res liker has logged on. The number knower.
I was taking notes on this, so it's like
nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it released with VR mode, and I know that was a really big thing that everyone over at Enhance was very, very excited about, and I know Miz was extremely excited about that. I have bought and subsequently sold 2 VR headsets since then, with the express purpose of playing Res Infinite in it, and have chickened out. Partially because footage that I've seen of people playing it in VR, just the fact that you can just whip your head around and take the cursor with you really fast, the way you can with like a mouse or something, makes it seem like it would be way too easy maybe. But then also, I don't know, if you're moving your whole head around and stuff, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. But I think I was afraid it might be emotionally overwhelming. It's like I bought a PSVR and I played Tetris Effect and a bunch of other stuff, but I did not play Res. And then I very briefly had a Quest 2 for a while and did the same thing there, where I was just like, downloaded it, installed it, didn't get around to it, and then ended up getting rid of both of them quickly because I just get VR sick really easily anyway. Anyway, the point is, like, that's the kind of thing that I think Miz has always been interested in. And I think that's why all of his games tend to lean really hard into sensory experiences and being more aesthetically driven and trying to use play to facilitate creative expression and exploration and unique kind of experiences that can't be done otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Miz as a person, and the Dreamcast's like legacy is that of like a console that was trying to do more than was possible at the time, and was also capable of more than other consoles were, and it was ahead of its time in a lot of its ways, but like that was also like punctuated by a bunch of people trying to do more than it could, which is why these are like a lot of like creatively inspired and influential games that weren't quite what they could ultimately be, but they were trying to get as far as possible because it feels like this is our last console of all time, and we don't know if the lights are going to be on next year, sort of
just
thing.
Throw everything out the door. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, this game is definitely an embodiment of that, and like its legacy as a game that continued to get re-released and expanded upon with each new iteration to ultimately be what Ms. was trying to do with it is a testament to all of that. You know, speaking about like this game in its original form, you weren't somebody who played the original release of Rez. You came into it a bit later. So what was your first encounter with this game?
I wish I had some kind of like great romantic story I could tell you about, like super memorable, like first time that I played Rez or whatever. But like I was aware of it before. I knew of the PS2 game. I just had not encountered it and didn't have a PS2. So I didn't actually play it until it was on 360. Yeah, I think I just sat down with it one day and gave it a shot and just kind of fell into it. I probably did not put it down until I had at least, completed Area 5 once or whatever. The 360 port is marginally interesting because it tried to take some of those original ideas forward. So like the Dreamcast port has the vibration support with the jump pack, right? Just normal controller vibration. PS2, same thing with the DualShock, but then they had the trans vibrator as well, which is just a thing you plug into the USB port. With the 360 release, there's the controller that you're playing with, but then you can also sync, I think, up to 5 other controllers. And the idea is you would just like tape them around your like limbs or whatever, just like other parts of your body. And like they were trying to do this thing for try to find as many ways to blend senses as they could. The haptic feedback of just normal rumble was not enough. When they made Infinite, they were showing off that synesthesia suit that they built that has, however many dozens of different little like motors in it that like vibrate all over your body, which I think did they make 1 or 2 of those? Anyway, the only person that I know that has actually worn that thing is Jeff Gersman.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what it's like to actually utilize that thing, but I know they busted out for like art museum events and stuff in Tokyo. Like they just be like, here, come check out this wild thing that we did. And they'll just put it in traveling mode or whatever and just let people experience what it is like to play Rez with your whole body, I guess. I don't know. Sounds pretty neat. I don't know if Miz is someone who's just like obsessed with the idea of synesthesia and doesn't like really experience it, but is just like really enamored with the concept, or if it's something that he's just trying to replicate as an experience, or maybe it's just a word that he's using, like not the like actual like, mental experience of living with synesthesia versus using it as a word to describe the corollary kind of relationships between senses, I guess. Like I think everyone has a little bit of like associations with like letters and colors or whatever. Like there are things, there are ways that people make associations with like flavors and texture or sounds and stuff like that, like
right. People who are like the science folder is yellow and the English one is blue. That like that thing when you're in like elementary school, and then it expands into like your mental associations and your categorizations of like abstract concepts.
Sure, but it's also like people talk about, like a coffee tasting like rounded and nutty, or like, guitar tone being crunchy and fuzzy.
Yeah.
I think just as people, we tend to swap sensory adjectives in an attempt at trying to communicate something not necessarily like poetic, but like a little bit more abstracted than like a very literal description of what you're trying to describe, I guess, of an experience. I don't know. Anyway, I have heard cases, at least, of people that experience really intense synesthesia to the point that there are like really, really strong like corollary hallucinations and stuff like that. I don't have that. I have a much lighter version that just is your garden variety synesthesia that tends to just come along as a sidecar that comes with autism. So like I have those associations and relations and stuff between senses, and they can kind of inform each other, but I'm not like, literally seeing sounds and stuff like that necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But like something about the idea of trying to blend all those things together speaks to me in a very specific way, because like these are things that all games do to an extent, but I don't know, a lot of Mrs. games are trying really hard to do that with a very specific, intentional mission mind about it,
Yeah. Just speaking about it purely as like an artistic expression of like the idea of synesthesia, I think even if he doesn't actually, I can't speak to whether or not he does. Maybe it's like you said, a fascination with it, an appreciation of it, or a replication of it. I do think this is a fascinating aspect of his philosophy, because I understand where he's coming from in a sense where it's like music requires one sense, kind of, right? Like Beethoven was deaf by the time he was finishing composition of the ninth and was like cutting the legs off his piano and feeling the vibrations to finish the rest of it. But that is something you hear. It is an auditory experience. And then let's take it to the next logical level. Film or television is audio-visual. And then there's video games, which requires touch input, and then you are seeing and hearing it. So I think understanding like the relationship of video games is like you are using multiple senses in a way that like the purest art form, music, is simply the one, in the way that in live performances we try to incorporate as many of those senses and textures and feelings into it. This is a logical conclusion of that idea, and like synesthesia being maybe the best way to express that without me having to explain in multiple paragraphs. Music 1, TV 2,
right. It's
gaming
a good
3.
like thing you can assume people have probably at least like read about before.
Yeah,
It's a word that I think people at least understand to some degree.
right. And his appreciation of
Kandinsky?
Kandinsky, his appreciation of Kandinsky as an artist, like who has written about synesthesia, is certainly, and has artistic expressions of the phenomena, certainly I think is showing that it's not just like a word for him, it is like an experience and like a meaningful thing to him. But I do think that like it is also just a very valuable shorthand in understanding what res is about philosophically and also like experientially.
Yeah, and it is a very like, despite being a very like solitary, isolated single player experience, it is still a game that is very social in the sense that it's very like broadly humanity minded. We're all connected. We're all together in this life, as they say. The Tetris Effect song, but it's the same idea. Like a lot of that stuff is in Tetris Effect as well, in a way that is like really overt and goofy, but also like it's earnest enough that I don't mind. And Rez is kind of similar in that sense as well. It's very, they were pulling from like everything from like the Shibuya Kei movement that they were like working in when this was being developed, to things like Burning Man or whatever. Like they were just trying to find like, where are people gathering for like primal human social experiences? And that their answer basically was clubs.
Mm-hmm.
So like the dev team for Rez is the dev team for Space Channel 5, effectively. Like it's almost identical credits. They just, 5 o'clock, the lights turn off and they turn off. They close whatever project they're working on for Space Channel 5 and start working on Rez. They would do a lot of research around the area, walking around Shibuya in 99, 2000. I'm sure there was no shortage of extremely cool, music, lights, sounds, colors, fashion, culture, all kinds of stuff happening. Like there was such a huge explosion of art there at the time already.
Yeah, Jet Set Radio is primarily a Shibuya-based.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like, it very much like, I'm glad that if one video game company was going to be there in that time to capture that sentiment, that it was Sega. Because they're the kinds of people who would do stuff like this with it, that would take that ball and run with it.
Yeah.
Again, like I was saying earlier, there's a little bit of like techno hippie vibes to Rez, and that's a little bit of what I meant with that kind of using this like kind of romantic idealization of a world where everyone is now digitally interconnected, being a relatively new and novel concept before reality hit, and it became what it became. Before 9/11, before the internet became the internet, before before there was a MySpace or whatever.
Or private equity, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like that's actually what that means. This is a Front Mission 3 vision of the internet.
Yeah, I mean, like compare and contrast this with like another recent thing that had come out around this time, The Matrix, which is like a very sees like the negative of this interconnectedness as like a form of escapism that we voluntarily resign ourselves to for the sake of capitalism, like this like immersive rot almost, versus like Rez's philosophy of like, is this not possibly like the most liberating time? Is art not beautiful? Can we not enjoy the tune of a song? Can we not be connected with our senses? And can we not connect our primal senses with our logical mind into becoming something more and evolve? Optimism versus like revolution, I suppose.
Also a lot of just globe trotting outside of Japan so they could buy a lot of psychedelics, but
the world is ending and they partied about it is kind of like that attitude in the game development of this game.
Yeah, I mean, like when was that? Shoot, I don't even remember his name now. The dude that is it Fukuyama Francis Fukuyama, the whole like the end of history is 1990.
Yeah, Francis Fukuyama is the history guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It almost feels like something that was born out of that era of just like, okay, well, if history as we think of it is over, then let's make a new one. And like this, like very kind of like naive, bright eyes, blue sky idea of like, okay, let's like got this big blank canvas of a new millennium. Like, let's create something beautiful together. And then instead, we made a lot of war.
And it is a little like I can see the word naive being used in this, but like
I don't mean that in a condescending way by any
no,
means.
not
either.
at all.
Like,
optimistic, yeah. No, I know, I get it, but like I was just defensive about it in the sense, and I shouldn't feel defensive about it. This is your favorite work of art, but like that like sense of like Eden being this thing that retreated because of the overwhelming amount of information and just the general like pessimism of the world, and like it's just like your job as the player to liberate Eden from this and to sort of like, hey, it's going to be okay. The sun is up. The sky is blue. It's beautiful. And so are you, you know, that kind of attitude about the whole thing. Like it at least gestures at the idea of like, there are legitimate problems to have. And this information overload can be something that can overwhelm the human mind. And it's probably not a natural state to be in. But that doesn't mean that life isn't worth appreciating and living through. And again, good music. But before we talk more about the artistic merits of Rez and like the beauty behind it, we do have to talk about how readily available this game is. So those who are interested in playing it can check it out in my segment I do every episode, No Country for Old Games. Listened to the show before, the subject of video game preservation means a great deal to me, and I believe that video games are an art form. This is something Miz also believed in, and was like a big part of him getting into the industry, was seeing the artistic merit of, you know, this thing. And this is a driver in why he has tried to make this game readily available for future console generations, because he genuinely believes that this game is a work of art, and I believe it too. And would that everybody had the same enthusiasm for their art as Miz did for Rez.
The whole team did really too. Like, I don't want to dismiss the work of anyone else involved in there. There were not many of them.
There were not a lot of them, and every time they port it, they get a lot of the same developers back to work on porting this thing forward. But in general, a lot of publishers do not keep their games, you know, on modern devices, and this is where we get to things where it's like Panzer Dragoon Saga costs hundreds of dollars to buy in the secondhand market.
Oh, it's almost $2,000 now.
As time oh shit, really?
It's almost $2,000 now.
As time goes on, games that were once readily available to purchase, I mean, Panzer Dragoon being a bad example of that because only 15,000 were shipped to the state or whatever, states or whatever. But
I don't know if that was ever confirmed, by the way, but that's the number that's always thrown around. Anyway.
It's a believable number, which is kind of like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, because you did believe it, that says a lot about society.
But it feels true, you know?
Yeah. What is this, Joe Rogan? No. This is... Jamie, can you check that? Is this Joe Rogan? Yeah, point is, as time goes on, games that were once easily, readily available to play and purchase become more and more difficult to acquire. So we're going to rate today's game on a scale of A to ARG. And ARG is obviously an expression of frustration and is no way me covertly advocating for piracy, which is illegal.
I will happily advocate for piracy of video games that are not.
Well, he's a video
available.
game developer guy, so he can say it.
You know, don't steal shit if it's still like currently a going concern. But whatever.
Who are you hurting if you download Panzer Dragoon Saga?
Literally no one. There's no way to give anyone money for that. Like, there's literally no way to do that.
They're not putting Sega Saturns back on the shelf.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a whole other.
Hey,
the whole thing with the Saru Saturns that they're chopping up and selling on AliExpress lately. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Anyway, they're selling new old Saturns that have been hacked up. Anyway,
let's go to like an Alex Jones. They're selling the old Saturns as new Saturns.
They're turning the frickin' Saturns gay or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, these woke Saturns. So the history of Rez's availability is actually quite interesting because it is a Dreamcast game, and that just makes this whole thing inherently interesting. Rez was one of the last first-party titles for the Sega Dreamcast, and it was the very first Sega-produced game released for the PlayStation 2. It was originally released in Japan on November 2nd, 2001 for the Sega Dreamcast and on the PlayStation 2, when Rez released in North America on January 8th, 2002 it was only the PlayStation version, despite an English localization for the Dreamcast version existing, as it was released in Europe in February of 2002 alongside the PlayStation 2 version. So that copy of the Dreamcast version of Rez that you held up earlier that nobody saw but I did, you had to import that, as I understand it.
Yes. Worth noting, none of the Japanese releases of Rez have any Japanese text in them. It's all English.
So it's all English.
It's all English.
Fascinating.
I have ripped the font files out if you need them.
I believe you. If it doesn't have Japanese in it, I don't need it. That's very interesting. I did not know that, but it is such like a minimal experience that like a non-English speaker would have an easy time playing it, and that feels very part of the experience. Yeah, the Japanese Dreamcast version of Rez has a Moralian alien as an unlockable character if the Dreamcast has save data from Space Channel 5, the other Sega-developed music game. United Game Artists may have shuttered in 2003, but that is not the end of Rez. It would be Rez erected some years later as Rez HD, a high-definition remake released on Xbox 360 through the Xbox Live Arcade on January 30th, 2008. This version was published by Microsoft Game Studios. This HD remake came about as a result of Tetsuya Mitsuguchi acquiring the rights to Rez from Sega to create an improved version of Rez that was as close to the game's original vision as possible. 3 employees from Japanese indie studio Hexadrive and 7 or 8 people from Mitsuguchi's own studio, Q Entertainment, now defunct, developed this HD version. Rez's original artist, Katsumi Yokota, was one of those developers. The most substantial changes in this HD edition were the change to the aspect ratio, as well as the increase in frame rate from 30 to 60. Xbox Live Arcade was discontinued for the Xbox 360 on July 29th, 2024, meaning you can no longer download or purchase Rez HD for the Xbox series of consoles.
Good news, though. There's almost no reason to.
It does not appear to have been forward ported to the Xbox One or Series X or S
not.
anyway. So licenses, music, etc. But this is a game that actually does maintain its music licenses, as it did actually continue to be remade and ported forward. It was not the end of Rez. Once again, it was resurrected in 2016 for the PlayStation 4 as Rez Infinite. This version of Rez, developed by 2 small studios founded by Mitsuguchi, Enhanced Games, and Resonair, includes the full Rez experience and a new level called Area X, developed from scratch in Unreal Engine 4. Both this level and the original experience were also made compatible for virtual reality devices such as the PlayStation VR in the case of the PlayStation version. We can talk about Area X later, but let's talk about the other ways this game is available. The PS4 version of Rez Infinite released on October 13th, 2016, co-published by Enhanced Games and I Am 8-Bit. A later update featured support for the PlayStation 4 Pro. As a PS4 game, it is backwards compatible on PS5, which is how I played it, though a PS5 port with PSVR 2 compatibility was released on February 22nd, 2023. Owners of the PS4 version can upgrade to the PS5 version for $10. I stuck with the PS4 version. Rez Infinite was also released for Windows on August 9th, 2017. This version was also compatible with the HTC Vive and Oculus Rift. It was also released to Android devices on November 20th that same year, but requires the now discontinued Google Daydream peripheral to play.
My wife had a Pixel 3, I think, that came with that thing. And again, I downloaded Rez on that, and I was like, oh, I'll try it. And then I was like, I don't want to try VR on a phone. That sounds terrible. and then I didn't.
I'm just thinking of that David Lynch video where he's like, you haven't watched a movie on your fucking phones.
It is such a sadness to think that you've seen a film. Anyway.
Yeah. And it was at one point available on Amazon Luna, Amazon's cloud gaming platform, though a cursory look indicates to me that it is no longer on that platform.
I would not want to stream this game. That sounds like a really bad idea for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, the technology isn't there yet for most games. Don't try it for this one.
I did one time try to remote play it on a Vita from the PS4 that was 6 feet away from me in the living room, just to see what that was like. And that latency was too much, but
I'll stream myself today.
Turns out, no, don't still feel.
Yeah. It was also a launch title for the Oculus Quest VR headset released on October 20th, 2020. So, long and short of it is you can presently easily and readily play this game on Microsoft Windows, and you can easily play this game on the PlayStation ecosystem. How do you play this game?
Close my eyes and throw a dart at the board? I don't know.
I mean, you showed a lot of copies of Rez.
Yeah, there's more where that came from. This isn't even all of it. It's a problem. Anyway.
He showed me a stack.
I was like, it'd be too weird if I came in here with like a t-shirt from, anyway. Corey Schmitz did a bunch of really good design work for I Am 8-Bit merch for Res Infinite's release back in the day. But anyway, I think go-to is usually just on Steam or PS5. But like I said, last night I went through the Dreamcast port and the PS2 version as well, back to back, just because I had not played either of those in a good long while. PS2 one mostly because that is a PlayStation 2 game that ships on a compact disc. And I don't know how many PS2s are in this house, so don't ask me, but none of them can read a CD. For whatever reason, the CD laser on all of them is cooked, but they're fine with DVDs.
Yeah, they are famously difficult to, repair. If you take it to a classic game store, there may be a guy who can work on them.
I take all my stuff to if I'm not doing it myself, I take it to Crystal Lee of Sound Retro Co. She is fantastic. Has done a lot of mod work for me, but also I want to make sure that I can actually pay her for it, which is, again, going back to being in month 11 of unemployment, not the highest priority right now.
Yeah, I didn't want to spend my limited funds on the $10 upgrade to the PS5 version of this game.
But I found out by accident that one of my Japanese PS2s does still read CDs. So I played through the Japanese PS2 port after playing through the Dreamcast one. And it is worth noting, you said that Res HD bumps it up to 60 because it is 30 on PS2. Would you like to know how it runs on Dreamcast? It's 20. It's almost locked at 20.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh, well.
It's
they were pushing the boundaries.
It takes getting used to. It's rough. I don't recommend playing that on Dreamcast for any reason other than either historical curiosity or just you're looking for a very specific vibe. And that vibe needs to be a slideshow.
And this is coming from the person who owns 5 copies of this game, so I'm going to take your word for it.
Any normal modern platform is totally fine. Res Infinite as it exists, I don't think there is a bad way to play it. And even if you do end up with a copy of the 360 port, whatever, it's fine. It's the only quote unquote issue with it is there's one enemy type that when you hit them, the sample that plays is one semitone off. So it's half a note out of where it's supposed to be. And that's it. That's the only thing I can think of in that whole port that's incorrect or whatever.
Right.
But shifting to 16:9 was huge. And having played it in wider aspect ratios and stuff since, it was weird going back to 4:3 again for the first time in probably a couple of years last night and being oh, right, once something is off that corner, it's gone. But it also, I forgot how it gives you more camera movement as well than I was used to in the modern ports. The older ones, being in 4:3, you would have to actually you bring the cursor up to the edges of the screen and the camera starts panning around to where it needs to be or whatever. But anyway, I forgot how we got here. But
ports,
yes, the currently readily available versions of Res are the versions to play IMO.
Yeah, this is a game that feels immersive, and if there was an artistic reason to change the aspect ratio, I know that it's people try and discuss this. I'm sympathetic to it, but this is a game that is artistically trying to do as much with the space around the person as possible. So it is necessary to. This is meant to be played in VR.
It's a game that wants you to be enveloped inside of it. Yeah, I don't think that anything is lost by widening the screen area or anything like that.
Right. And I had a great time playing Res Infinite. It felt.
And I'm glad.
Very, very.
This would have been really weird if you didn't. I feel really bad.
That's the thing about talking about people's favorite and most meaningful video games is I end up playing good ones.
Was your secret plan all along? To play good video games?
Oh no, a good video game that I finished in an hour and a half. God help me. So, giving this my ratings are just more to prove a point than they are an actual objective rating system of availability. Technically, this game is more available than it's ever been because it's not locked into the physical ecosystem of hoping you find a PS2 copy out there somewhere from some weirdo. But it is a thing where it's I could see how this game can be more readily available, for example, by being not just locked into the Windows ecosystem of computers or by being by having an Xbox port at all right now.
Yeah, I definitely assumed that there was, I figured it was on Switch and stuff as well until I checked that again. I was oh no, okay. For whatever reason, I thought that just got ported to everything.
You would hope. But right now it is still just mainly the PlayStation and Windows and various VR systems.
Yeah.
So I would, shrug. It's like a B. I would say it's like, if I had to like give it an assigned like rating, like you can download this thing. It was actually a big point of how this was able to be continued, that it wasn't locked into having to sell physical discs and copies anymore. Like being able to sell it at a lower price by making it available in digital stores is actually a good argument for, on the developer and publisher side of things, to sell games in a more convenient way for people. I, of course, love my physical media, but I would never dismiss people who buy digitally and like sell things digitally, because I know how important it is under a capitalist society to make a living.
Yeah.
And to have people see as much of your art as possible.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan wants you to watch your things on IMAX. He still releases DVD versions of Interstellar, It's fine. Okay? It's fine. Anyway, while the game did not sell well on its original release, it did receive positive reviews at the time. The PS2 version holds a 78 out of 100 on the review aggregation website Metacritic, and its subsequent re-releases exposed its new fans, such as you and me, who are grateful to have played it. The PC, PS4, and Xbox 360 versions of Rez hold an 89 out of 100 on Metacritic, so it's only risen in people's estimation over the years. But we are not here to reduce the legacy of Rez to a series of review scores or sales figures. If we had to talk about sales figures as a metric of success, oh no, not the Dreamcast, oh no. But we, of course, now revere it as a console, the little console that tried, and we love it for it.
Yeah, I mean, like, sales numbers and stuff are still useful for providing an understanding of where something sits in the broader like cultural context.
Yeah.
This was not a huge blockbuster popular video game. And I think there are probably still plenty of people that would have happily bought and played it and enjoyed it that just did not get it in front of them. And that's fine. That's just a thing that happens.
I tried to read some like contemporary reviews of Rez, and it wasn't the kind of game that like was talked about on like every single outlet possible. Toonami, which would always like review video games as its segment, when they reviewed it, it was like, I played this game that came out a few years ago, and it might be a little hard to find now, so you might have to order it online, but I checked out this game Rez, and I kind of liked it, so you should check it out. Like, that's an actual thing you can watch on YouTube. I'm going to link it in the description.
Tom? Was that Steve Bloom?
It was Steve Bloom didn't review it. It's like the girl AI that reviewed it in that episode.
I thought it would have been really funny if they just had him reading other people's writing in character or whatever.
Yeah, no, but like, most of the time Tom would do those reviews, and it'd be like,
oh, okay, yeah.
Toonami gives this game a 7 out of 10. Like, it wasn't even like that kind of like editorialized, like we're going to give it like a 9 out of 10 every time or something like that. It was just like somebody in the staff played this game and wants to talk about it, and this is a way we can do it in 45 seconds.
Yeah, I love learning how bootstrapped all that stuff was later on with all the Toonami and like Adult Swim stuff.
Yeah, it's like how Conan was just like doing like the Pierre Bernard's like Recliner of Rage, where like the guy who was just doing like the graphic design was like allowed to have a 2-minute segment where he complained about old anime. It's like this aired on NBC. All right. But the point is, we're not here to reduce the legacy of Rez to its Toonami reviews or whatever. We're here to talk about what it means to the people who love it and play it today. So let's talk about that, Andrew.
All right.
Journey to distant realms. Explore the furthest reaches of the universe. Survive deadly dangers. Experience matters of the heart and more in a new actual play podcast. Join me, Audrey. That's right, just me, as I play tabletop games designed for one player. From journaling games to tarot games to even games that take me outside, I'm bringing you along for the ride. Join me for every episode of Alone at the Table.
What do you like about Rez, and what does it do that you wish more video games would do?
I like everything about Rez. That's such an obvious cop-out answer, but I mean, there's nothing I dislike about it. But it's also like we talked about earlier with the simplicity of it mechanically. Like, it's not doing that much. Like, the most complicated it can get is if you start trying to score chase, which involves like, instead of shooting normally, it's about like trying to maximize lock-on combos, and that includes waiting for enemies to fire projectiles at you and then locking onto those projectiles as well to then get the points from that, like that kind of thing. Like, you can start making it more dangerous for yourself to start score chasing if that's a thing that you want to do. and I have very much, and I've had a lot of fun doing that over the years. But the point I was trying to get to is that it's not necessarily making any really huge swings in terms of like mechanical. I'm blanking on the word now. In terms of like the site that you're setting for like the level of, I don't know, like quality you want to reach or whatever, or the level of difficulty for a thing you're trying to do. Okay, yeah, no, there's just a big brick wall around whatever that word is in my brain. I'm sorry. Anyway, but yeah, Rez is not trying too hard to do too many things for it to really, I think, fail at any of them or rub me the wrong way, or, there's no like one thing about it that I wish was different or whatever. And I think it's because it's just not necessarily aiming that high in terms of complexity, but everything else about it that's there, the things that I like, the things that are meaningful to me, and the reasons that it's such an important game for me is not like, it's not authorship, it's not like auteur theory stuff. It's just the amount of like handcrafted intentionality in that game that I think is prevalent in the final product. It feels very much like it was crafted as a bespoke experience, I guess. I mean, whatever, like every video game is that, but like it feels so, the hands of the people that made it feel really obviously visible throughout Rez, and the amount of care and weird creative ideas bouncing off walls and stuff that are just kind of on display throughout it, I think are just something that I wish was something that we could see in more games of, obviously when things are larger in size and scope and budget. Scope is basically the word I was looking for earlier, by the way. Damn it.
It's fine.
Obviously when things are bigger in size and scope and budget, you have to start scaling back a lot of the fingerprints in there. It becomes much harder for individuality to show through in that. And I don't necessarily mean like any one member of a dev team leaving their personal mark on it or whatever, the way that let's say a graphic designer might have made a Rez themed emblem for Destiny 2. Nothing like that, but
Right.
but more just, there was something that I said in a video I did a while back about Resident Evil Dead Aim that I think applies here, where it's just it feels inherently and eminently like it was crafted by somebody for the player, for you to experience, the proverbial you, I guess. But so I guess authorship in that sense is something that you see a lot in, again, games made by smaller studios or people that like are names that are followed. You start to like, that's where it starts to get into the like auteur stuff, where you start looking at like creative directors and the types of games that they tend to make. When I play Rez, I can feel the just like the energized creative excitement buzzing off of it. I can feel a small group of people that were really psyched about making something really weird and new and cool. It's just infectious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very exciting and motivating for me. I don't know.
It does feel like a game that was crafted by a team and not just made to be sold. It doesn't feel like a commercial product. It feels like an art experience. And it's an art experience that someone's able to bring into a person's home and feel it. Like there is something to like its simple presentation, to like doing the wires of everything to evoke like that simple old limited graphical style, but like it's very, very pretty when it does it, and it's a stylistic choice. It's not like it actually looks like 8-bit vectors on a screen or anything like that.
Right. No, it's just line work.
It's just good line work meant to almost juxtapose itself against like the realistic graphic work that was happening around it. That's not what Sega was interested in doing. It was about having colorful, unique, varied experiences at this point in time. But as simple as this game looks on a presentational level, it's doing this deliberately, one, because there is a level at the end that is inverting all of that and trying to create something more human after playing in something so intentionally artificial.
Yeah.
But even when it is in that artificial space, it is still throwing a lot of design principles and philosophies at you. Each level has different visual themes and colors to it. There's a lot of ancient Egypt iconography in the first level. And then I think it's Indian stuff in the second one, Mesopotamian in level 3 and 4 is Chinese. I think that's the order of it.
I think they were trying to describe like a, I think Miz was on some like Fertile Crescent shit. Like he was trying to do this whole like, cradle of humanity spreading out from, would that be not
world history and like the internet, the interconnectedness of the human experience on, like, you know, in the internet, we are now like connected in the present, but like in history, we are connected through the actions of the past, ancient Egypt, Indian, Mesopotamian, Chinese things, the dominant cultural forces of their respective eras and everything like that, and the culture that they've all provided, and the significance to these specific pathways on like trade routes and everything like that, things that were living interconnectedly in different ways are now we're able to achieve in a single instant and experience in a single 2-hour video game that is emulating the experience of human interconnectedness in a digital space. But also that last level, which is about being reborn into a new humanity, and like the visual metaphors change from digital abstractions into literal human creation, and talking about evolution as both a species and like birth and extinction across history over billions of years.
Yeah. In very literally with like text pop-ups and stuff as well, to an extent. They're small and limited, but they are trying to help communicate what the rest of the imagery there is evoking. Also, Sumeria is what I meant to say earlier, not Sumatra. Sorry.
Sumatra. Yeah, I heard what you meant. There's like a whole hacker narrative that's presented to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that last stretch of the game, that final level, when you actually go and awaken Eden, which Eden being the name of the garden under which all of humanity was born through, according to the Bible. It's a shorthand terminology for like new humanity, rebirth, whatever you want it to be, the beginning, something pure, something. But when you actually go and liberate Eden from like these viruses in this computer system, this final level is changing that imagery from like black isolating backgrounds to white, which in the Bible, the first thing, let there be light, and then there was light. And then that was like the first spark that like lit up the idea of life being possible to be made into this world. And then suddenly it's like all birthing imagery and like natural worlds being made. And you're seeing trees.
Like trees shooting up out of the ground. And
yeah, animals and things like that. And the music even has lyrics in this final level. It's like a interpolation of the line from Dune, "Fear is the mind killer," that just keeps repeating itself as a sample over and over again, but like in a life affirming way, like don't be afraid.
Fear is the mind killer.
Like it's being framed in a life affirming way and not just like as a mantra to calm oneself.
Yeah, it's not the rest of the litany of fear. It's just Adam Freeland using that one sample.
Yeah,
but yeah, it is presented in a much more like free your mind kind of way than a Gom Jabbar kind of way or whatever.
Yeah, but like it's like it stops becoming like a hacker narrative and it feels more like a sperm going into a womb to be born into humanity sort of imagery, as Mizuguchi envisioned it, the metaphor of life, like you said, like that kind of trippy way.
Like to be clear to people at home who maybe have not played it, it's not like literal like biological imagery. This isn't like Gradius or something. It's
no,
it's still very much using just like robot-y looking stuff, and it's still like flat shaded polygons and clean vector lines, and it's still very digital, but it is digital in a way that is behaving organically and evoking organic imagery and nature in very overt and direct ways.
Yeah Incredible music in this game, each level being built around the music and very I talked about this in the production part of everything, but like every level being tailored around its sound and building on itself as you get through each section of the thing, and it becomes like a symphony of sounds.
Yeah, it's I guess again to help describe for anyone who hasn't played it, it's as you're shooting and stuff, it's quantizing your inputs to I don't know if it's like 16th or like 16 triplets, whatever it is, but so that everything that you do is still like happening on beat and contributing to the kind of cacophonous layering of different textures in the music that is happening as a result of the way that you're interacting with it, which means that the song, I guess for lack of a better word, is a little bit different every time. Each stage is broken up into 10 different little subsections, and if you don't ever progress through them and you just stay in one, or just stay in one of them, I guess, the music never evolves. Like you'll keep playing the rest of the level, like the rest of the enemies will come, like the environment will not change, and the other tracks in the music will not be, coming in and out and having their transitional moments and stuff like that. It's very much trying to build that energy level along with you as you progress through the level to keep you as a player very directly a part of the soundtrack, as well as making like you as a person part of the soundtrack in a way, but then also just physically like utilizing your gameplay to connect with it that way.
Right. No, like this is a game that is very experiential, and it's very difficult to like convey like the effect of this game through the act of discussion. It is again, it is literally like the whole thing. It was meant to be experienced. It would be devastating to just hear somebody who worked on this game. It's like, I think it'd be devastating for any developer to like hear people talk about the game when it's like, well, no, we want you to play the game, and you'll get it. You'll feel it. It's about sensation. It's about feeling. And that is hard to like, discuss analytically. And again, an audio only medium, but it is a game that is like top to bottom meant to be experienced. There's a lot of work put into it to feel like this natural, like immersive, like I feel a part of this experience. This is a game where music is at the forefront, but it was not designed to be a rhythm game. Like you don't have to do things in time. Like there is
they got
like
that out of their system during the day with Space Channel 5.
Yeah. But like the lock-on mechanic for shooting at enemies was brought in order to help players without a natural sense of rhythm to still be able to interact musically with the game. Those things still have an impact on like the sounds that are being produced from your actions, but you don't have to time it perfectly.
Yeah.
And you are still creating the cacophony of sound. It's like taking that principle from a Panzer Dragoon and then putting that into Res in a way that it is like, oh, you want an action experience with like this music thing, this music rail shooter. Yeah, this is you're shooting at things and taking things off the screen, and there's like a musical output, and you're moving forward in a thing. They took it even further by making it so that there was a traveling mode, so you can just experience the level without fear of getting damaged or hurt. And it's trying to be as inclusive in like feeling this game as possible in a period of time when game development was very inclusive neutral.
At best, for sure,
best.
right? Like, but yeah, again, going back to Miz not being a person whose relationship with video games is like that at all. He just wants to share cool experiences with people and make that happen. So yeah, there are some kind of forward-thinking sort of accessibility considerations in there as well. But like for the launch party, I know with the or maybe it was before, like, was it pre-launch, something like that? I don't know. They had a show where they rented out a club, and they I don't know if it was if Abizu was DJing or if it was somebody else, but they were playing the game on the Dreamcast in traveling mode on a big projector on the back wall of the club, and just while people were dancing along with the music that was happening from the game, and that was the soundtrack of the club that night, effectively.
Yeah.
It's very much a game that is, I think, really, really excellent at being an arcadey video game. But if you are not looking for that, it is also like that does not at all have to stand in between you and a cool, weird, creative experience.
Yeah, like it's a game that's not meant to be long. Like I said, it can be finished in under 2 hours. There is a fail state if you're playing it on like the normal playing settings. But even if you get to the boss and die towards the end of the boss, that's like maybe 10 minutes of your time that you would have to if you're trying to get like a 100% analysis on a run, because in order to unlock the final level of the game, you have to get a 100% analysis, which just means like experiencing every room functionally that they've laid out for you in a level. And then you get through 10 of those, and then you fight the final boss, and then like the boss is scaled to like, it's all background stuff. Like the game doesn't really communicate this to you. It's just sort of like understood. Like you get 100%. The boss is more difficult depending on how well you've like done at the game. It's like a very dynamic difficulty system like the Resident Evil games have, where it's like not communicating to you, hey, the game is getting harder, but like we sense how good you are at this game, and the boss is going to reflect that in some way. So it's creating a gratifying experience for people of all skill levels.
Yes, the problem is if you've played it too many times and know it too well, and your performance is relatively consistent every time, it does end up being kind of the same experience, but that's also totally fine. Like I don't.
Yeah, because again, the game is like trying at gesturing and having replayability, be it with its score attack mode in a mode where like you just play the whole game as one long run. So it becomes like this sort of survival mode that becomes a lot more gratifying to experience if you're trying to like feel like an expert on the game. And then there's like perfect scores that you can get, like, oh, you eliminated every single thing on the screen, you picked up every single support item, and you beat the You deleted every single like pixel that the boss was throwing at you for however many points. You are the master at this game.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the only times I remember really like trophy hunting on a PS4 thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I just need to have all of these for my, I got a brand to maintain.
As Mr. Rez, yeah.
Yeah, but no, for sure. And I know, again, that I'm not the only person for whom this is true, but I have probably played more Rez in my time than anyone at UGA intended for anyone to play of Rez. But also, I don't know how much they were thinking about, what the legacy of this game would look like a quarter century away almost.
Yeah.
The one American dude that worked on this game, Jake Kasdal, is a friend of mine now, just like through happenstance of industry stuff. And so occasionally I will bug him with various Rez or Space Channel 5 questions, which he's all too happy to just blurt and blather on about all day long.
Sure.
Which is great. So I've been able to glean some degree of information behind like what the kind of, I don't know, a little more of the creative heart behind where that game was at and like what the studio culture was like and what they felt about the thing that they were making. And I really get the impression that, I mean, like obviously nothing about this game says that it was looking to make a bunch of money. I mean, it was never even going to do like Parappa the Rapper numbers, let alone anything else. But it's any other better example. Like I was just trying to think of other like music games from the era. Anyway,
Samba de Amigo.
Yeah, exactly. It probably didn't even do Samba de Amigo numbers, to be perfectly honest. But it was just a handful of people that were all excited about the same things and came together to make something really cool together. And they all kind of had a pretty good, like similar idea of what it was they were building. And it came together shockingly well.
It is a testament to the power of continuity and also maintaining and keeping your staff instead of laying them off, because like all of these people are also bringing past experiences and past games that they developed into this game, like the lock-on system from Panzer Dragoon is in this game as a very effective and satisfying way of incorporating rail shooting elements into this, again, experience. And then like all these people were working on Space Channel 5, so they like knew what a musical game was without having to like learn completely new design principles from the ground up. There was just a lot of, we can work on this and be experimental with it because we know what a normal game asterisk is like, and now it can get really strange and weird and abstract and like really push the limits on like what just a pure vibes based game can be.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm sure Space Channel funded this game, honestly, but that's also not even a game that sold particularly well either. But it's still, I think, had a much broader splash. Granted, it did also come out in the States, so maybe that's where I'm getting mixed up. But yeah, like if you go back even before Panzer Dragoon into Sega's like big arcade history and stuff, they have Space Harrier and stuff like that. That was like, they've always been making stuff along these lines, right? In terms of games where you are painting over a thing with a target and blasting at it, while moving a little dude around the screen. Usually. I
wonder if there was a specific employee whose job that is, because you play Sonic Adventure 2, and there's also like the mech levels where you're playing as Tails or Eggman, and there's like a bunch of like, you can lock onto a bunch of things, and then you let go of the button, and it hits all those targets, and it just feels really good. I don't know if that's just like an unspoken rule in Sega games that you have to have that, or if there's like a guy whose dedicated job is, I'm Mr. Lock On, and I'm really good at locking on to things, and I put it in the game for you, and then I say, have a nice day, and I go on work on the next game that needs a lock on function. But whoever that person is, I want to shake their hand.
Yeah, it's just Yu Suzuki. He's just walking around to everyone's desk and be like, hey, I don't see any reticles.
I'm not seeing anybody locking on to anything. It's Samba de Amigo, man. It's lock on and kill him. Anyway, Rez is a good game that I enjoyed playing. It is an art exhibit video game, and I say that as like the highest form of praise I can have for a game. If I were to curate an art exhibit of video games, and I'm saying this as a person who literally played this game a week ago, if I were to make like a 5 to 10 game art exhibit, this would be one of the games in it, because it just understands the melding of the interactive with the experiential in an immersive way that few games are able to achieve, even amazing ones. It's just really good at just making you a part of this experience in a way that feels immersive. And it's like, do I get EDM now? Maybe. I guess I do, because it's like, I was never really particularly impressed by rave culture or anything like that. Obviously, I like electronic music and house music and everything like that. I get club music. I totally get club music, but like EDM specifically always felt so, the classic understanding of that in rave culture, I just never fully grasped my mind around it. But this game like fully like locked me into the idea of like what this is. in a dorky medium of video games, mind you, but like I was doing like the Danny DeVito. I get it now.
Yeah, it is a very strange experience because I think it's so focused in.
Mhm.
You know, again, like mechanically, what they're actually doing is so simple, so low in terms of like estimations of like things that cost money in game development.
Mhm.
It is like minimizing those things and maximizing looking cool without having to spend a lot of money to do so.
Mhm.
So they just like built a very elaborate and beautifully constructed work out of a lot of very simple parts, I think. And I find that very inspiring. I don't know. It's like watching like early Carpenter movies or something, you know, it's like Halloween or whatever, where it's just like, you made this with popsicle sticks and duct tape and it's incredible.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. Carpenter's one of my guys.
That's my favorite director, man.
Yeah.
Let's go.
He but this video game, right? Like it's so inclusive of the experience where it's like if you play the game long enough, it'll just unlock things for you that you would normally have to unlock through skill, where it's like you play something
that's
for like
right. There's time release too. Yeah.
time release where it's like you played the game for 10 hours. All right, fuck it. You unlock that mode. You don't have to work hard for it.
Here's
you gave us
Lost
10
Area
hours
or
of your
whatever.
life. You gave us 10 hours of your fleeting life here. I'm sorry that I made you work that hard for it.
Here's more video game.
Yeah.
Hopefully this will, make another hour of your life a little better.
Yeah, if you're that desperate for here, damn, this is kind of.
But yeah, and I like that Lost Area is in there as kind of a like. I don't remember what the story behind that was. If it was like a vertical slice, like demo level that they just kind of stuffed in at the end, or what. I know Abizu did that one as well for the music on there.
Mm-hmm.
He uses so many different pseudonyms. He's on this soundtrack in a couple different places under a few different names. He's Code E, Code EBZ, Mist. Like all of that is just Abizu, who is literally the only reason I miss Twitter is hanging out with that dude.
Yeah.
Because he just posts like pictures of random stuff in his studio or like stuff he's working on or whatever, and is very happy to just like hang out with whoever.
Sure.
And it's just like a very small account. Like he's just there hanging out. And in 2017, I want to say, I put out a little EP with some music that was very inspired by Rez. It was just a lot of 909s and 303s. And I sent it to him, and he was so giddy about it in a way that made me like tear up a little bit. He was like, I've never had musical fan art before. I was like, that is what this is. You're right. Like, I don't know. It was very... Everyone that I've ever encountered that has touched this game in any capacity has been just incredibly kind and delightful.
That's sweet. I'm happy to hear that. I know that you said that it's a perfect game to you. Is there any feedback, nitpicky or whatever, that you would give to it? Anything you wish it did better?
Not really, no. The most that I could ask would be like more of Area X, I guess, the new thing that they brought in with Infinite that seemed like a pitch for a new Res game, effectively, where it's not on rails. You are controlling your own speed, and instead of a lot of like clean lines and vectors, it's a lot of like particle effects and stuff like that. It's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's a slightly different take, and it feels much more like a sequel to Child of Eden with a Res skin on it a little bit. But I mean, Child of Eden is very literally just the sequel of Res, so that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, so like I guess what I would say if we need an answer here is like I would like there to be more of it eventually, I guess, but also I kind of just want those people to keep making whatever they want to make, you know? They don't necessarily need to keep making the same thing over and over unless they have other stuff they want to do with it, in which case go for it. I'm check it out.
Because I did play the Area X level, and I liked it. I liked it quite a lot. It was a completely different experience. Like I said, it was in Unreal Engine 4 instead of the original game's engine. It's a completely new thing. It's still a lot of the design principles of Res, but just put with a new aesthetic of everything. It's not doing computer digital thing, or if it is, it's more like how like the PlayStation 2 like opening
like home
thing
screen
is,
menu kind of,
instead of like a 90s computer kind of conception of the internet. It's like a new millennium version of like how we imagine the internet and dark spaces and everything like that. Light, very bright, a lot more humanoid, and I liked it. It was like a beautiful light show, and I would have liked to see more of that. And it made me feel almost like I don't want to say like sad, but like mournful that there wasn't more of this very specific type of game, because it is so singular and there's very little like it in just the pure version of it. There's certainly games that have been influenced by it. People from Harmonix, before they started doing the Guitar Hero and Rock Band games, they were a lot more experimental with games like Frequency
and Amplitude.
And Amplitude and stuff like that. And I think Amplitude, because Frequency predates Res, but I think Amplitude was afterwards, and then they were doing iToy stuff and Guitar Hero and everything like that. And they were like seeing that they're really admiring like the pure artistry and style and immersive feeling of what Res was producing. And they said it was a major influence on them as a company. And so it's like, without this game, we don't have Guitar Hero. Feels like a weird thing to say, but it feels true on a level.
Yeah, to some extent. It's like, there's a lot of that stuff, I think, with when you start pointing at like any kind of music or rhythm games. Once you get into like the mid to late 90s, it's like there's like a couple of these that kind of spawn everything in a weird way.
Yeah, because I did a Rock Band 2 episode, and Res didn't come up during that because I was aware of Res, but I didn't really understand like what Res was.
Sure.
But having now played it, it does feel like, oh, a lot of blanks have just been filled in retroactively.
Yeah, definitely one of those.
Yeah, because Rock Band and Guitar Hero definitely feel like a distillation of an idea without overwhelming the player. It's welcoming and inclusive in a way that it did start a whole peripheral movement. And I sure wish, I think on some level, Mizuguchi is like, they got it.
Yeah,
unfortunately, it's
honestly,
not a vibrator, but they got it.
No, but they're throwing back macro brews and having a type of party that doesn't really exist anymore. There's something to be said about that.
Yeah, it's just the pure love of music to be just
punctuated by plastic click clack sounds. Yes.
Oh yeah. Nobody's taping 4 controllers to their body, but at least they're having a good time.
Cowards. I mean, I still am, but they're just not on.
Yeah. These are my accessories.
Yeah. It's not a phase, Mom.
God, he's going through his res phase again. It's every month with this shit. I can't really like nitpick this game because of how direct and in and out it all is. I couldn't really find anything where I was like, that's just fucking bullshit. That's cumbersome. That's useless. It made me appreciate the rail shooter as a genre more, something that I've dabbled in, certainly. Like, I love Star Fox. Star Fox is one of my favorite games ever. This is not Star Fox. This is definitely a more distilled thing of it. I liked Panzer Dragoon, and this made me retroactively like Panzer Dragoon more, a game that I did like, and for its and enjoyed the the world that it crafted and like the gameplay and everything behind it. But like, this made me like understand it on a primal level, the way that this game wants you to understand on a primal level basically everything about it.
Yeah, it wants to remove as many barriers, even the thin and transparent ones, in between you and your like consciousness and personhood and whatever is happening on screen / in your hands / out of the speakers and stuff like that. It's very direct in a very literal sense in that way. I also, while I was flipping through a book here, I forgot another big influence on Res, which should be obvious because it's a gigantic influence on every video game made in Japan since it came out. But Xevious, Namco's top-down vertical scrolling shooter, another one of my all-time favorites.
Good game.
But yeah, fantastic game. It might not be like necessarily obvious on the face. I don't know. There's whole pages in here of interview stuff about that. But for the record, I'm pulling from there was a big old like hardback book vinyl soundtrack release some years ago that has a big old book in it full of art and interviews and all that stuff, which is
very well documented.
Illuminating. Yeah. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. But I was just sort of absentmindedly flipping through that for something to fidget with, and I saw the big old Xevious screenshot there, and I was like, yeah, it's probably worth bringing up the fact that like that game, even though the audio is extremely repetitive and monotonous in there, is still a weird like kind of conglomeration of sensory input that I think was a really powerful source of inspiration for a lot of people that encountered it when it was new. Velvet Underground of arcade games.
Sure, yeah. If you want to use more music comparisons, it feels like this game like initially just introducing you to its concept by like that first level where everything is black and quiet, and then like enemies pop up on the screen, and then you move the cursor to shoot at them. And it's just like it's slowly building, and then like it's just basic, like what a drum sample before moving on to like bigger backing track and then more enemies and then more, and then things are moving faster and there's more sound and more enemies and you're doing more. And so it's like there's only a handful of actions and inputs that you can do. You can lock on, shoot things. There's like the big like
The overdrive,
which is like the firing the bomb in Star Fox or whatever your equivalent is for that. Where like
it's a bit of a trap though.
Yeah.
Because it targets everything on screen, but it still can't target more than 8 things at once. And it's not actually different than your own like normal shots. For example, the boss at the end of stage 2 has it's moments where it has these big like spider legs or octopus tentacles or something folding down and one at a time and blasting a bunch of projectiles at you, rapid fire, like machine gun style. And if you try to use the overdrive shot there, it will keep targeting the projectiles as opposed to the source of the projectiles.
Mm-hmm.
And then you will get blasted. But generally speaking, it is a really, really good, like, oh shit card to pull when you're like, stuck.
Yeah.
Or backed into a corner, whatever.
Yeah. Especially if there's like a particular section where it's like, if I just shot that one thing, I'd have 100% in this level or whatever. It's good for that. But like, it's like it slowly builds where it's just like the drums and then like, okay, and then here's like the rhythm, here's the melody, here's like the full soundscape, and you're the player who's building on that by delivering on these actions and like doing everything correctly. It reminds me of Stop Making Sense, which just starts with like David Byrne walking out on the stage and he like plays his little toy that has just like the drum backing and he's just like singing Psycho Killer on stage by himself. And then the next song happens and somebody else joins him on the stage. And then the next song happens and more people join him on the stage until until
there's a huge Coke party and they're playing Girlfriend is Better for like 9 minutes and it's amazing.
It builds and builds and builds until you get like this just liberating, joyful experience of sound, and it's new wave sound. It's just like its own singular thing, and we love it for that. The Stop Making Sense of video games.
Truly. There's an opening paragraph on this page as part of the like pitch doc or whatever, but it just says Rez is a game without instruments that feels nonetheless like playing music. That's a good way to sum it up, I think. Like, that's a little bit abstracted again, but it tells you at least philosophically, I think, what they were kind of aiming for.
Yeah. It is audience participation in an acceptable and enriching way.
Yeah.
You said you have played this game's spiritual successor, Child of Eden.
Yes, I have.
Today, what are your feelings on it?
Revisited that with the PlayStation Move controller.
Oh, wow.
Because I did not want to try and deal with hooking up a Kinect. But yeah.
2 copies of Child of Eden that he held up, by the way, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3.
I think you can, this might still be true. I believe you can still get it sealed for like $4 or $5 on Amazon. They printed a lot of copies of this game and it did not sell anywhere.
Well, it is no longer available in like the digital marketplace. So this is the only way you can get it. So if you guys want to check this game out.
It is backwards compatible though.
Yeah. Well,
Xbox at least.
Okay.
If you stick a disc in, anyway, but it's interesting. I feel like it gets written off a lot in a weird way. I feel like a lot of people that I know that do like Rez and its ilk don't necessarily have a lot of time for Child of Eden, and I don't know if that's because it's got a like powerfully plur aesthetic or what. Because it's got a very different vibe to it. There's a lot of FMV. There's a lot of extravagant use of particles and colors and full motion video and like stock footage. And it's like someone blended a bunch of like karaoke laser discs together, like the background footage that plays in those and stuff, and then put Rez on top of that effectively, and then added weird motion controls. And my verdict after spending about 2 hours with it this morning with the PlayStation Move is that it is too damn slow. I've heard that it is surprisingly pretty all right with a Kinect. I haven't tried it. It's fine with a controller. I don't know. That's probably the actual way you should be playing it, theoretically. But yeah, it is a very similar game. You don't have a little avatar on screen. You just have the cursor and like a health meter in the corner. But it's built out a little more like a quote-unquote console game in the traditional sense. Like there are not like bars to fill and numbers to go up necessarily, but like the more times you clear the levels that are in there, the more, I don't know, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like vestigial stuff that you'll end up getting, whether it's like items to show off in a little like digital trophy case or like earning a certain amount of stars in terms of your performance on different levels to unlock more levels as opposed to just going through them in a linear completion fashion or whatever.
Right.
They were trying to give you reasons to spend more time with it at home in your house, as opposed to Res, which you can see all of in like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. It's a good version of that. I feel like people treat it like it was a huge disappointment of a follow-up, and I'm not really sure why. I haven't really looked into that either. I guess I haven't really cared enough to. It's just kind of there. I don't know.
I'm curious how it would like hold up on reappraisal now that it's not like the long-awaited follow-up to Res,
Yeah, that's true.
And it's not like competing with other games of its generation, and there isn't like the new game price tag on it. Maybe people would be willing to reassess it on like its own merits, like in a more neutral setting for this kind of thing. Like, Res can just be Res now. Maybe Child of Eden can just be Child of Eden now.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah,
because it does have its own ideas in there, and it is a decidedly less like digital cyberspacey vibe. That stuff is still in there, but it is much more leaning into a lot more the organic imagery. There's a lot of flowers and sunsets and rivers and women dancing like they're in a laundry detergent commercial kind of thing. Just like slowly and wispily spinning around on a hillside somewhere. That kind of thing.
Can you play it with like a normal controller?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, maybe I might just buy a PS3 copy because I still have my PlayStation 3.
Nice.
Yeah,
The PS Triple.
$9.75 free delivery. $9.99 pre-owned. Mercari $7.
Beautiful.
Jesus. $7. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything more than $15 on this thing.
Let me put it this way. I have never once seen a copy of Res at a thrift store. I've seen a lot of Childs of Eden at a thrift store.
I probably could find it at just a random Five Below. Like, oh shit, look at that.
Yeah, it's just been sitting there under like a pack of Cracker Jacks or something for 10 years.
The TJ Maxx collection,
Hey, welcome to Ross. We got a bunch of Levi's that are missing buttons and 6 copies of Child of Eden for the Xbox 360.
You could tape them to your body like you could for Res. Like the guy who only kind of knows about Res.
This guy was oddly specific information that's incredibly limited.
Why do you work at Ross? Somebody has to.
You sounded like Res.
Who do you think ordered these copies of Child of Eden?
Somebody had to refill the stock.
American Mitsuguchi, what are you doing here?
Hey, it's me.
All right. So what impact, besides what you've already described, has Res made on you?
I mean, yeah, on myself, I don't know how to necessarily quantify the impact that this game has had on me as a person. It's just, it's not something that I like obsess about and like think about constantly every single day or whatever, but it's just something that has always been there. And it's something that I've spent a lot of time with and a lot of time deconstructing and studying and thinking about. Every element of this thing just brings me so much joy, and I'm so, again, just inspired and excited by the very DIY nature of how it came together. Makes me really wish that any of the other like DIY indie studios that I, all the places my friends work now, that they were able to, like also pay bills and be, have all their needs met while doing cool stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that that was the case here. Yeah, not to say that they were, like wealthy or anything, but like they had a publisher.
They had a distributor and they had their rent paid.
It's a type of creative environment that I really wish was something that was availed to a lot more people. Because like the thing that kind of sucks when thinking about something like Res is thinking about how many other Reses in the world were never even, brought into the pre-production stage because of, just the things that we have to do in this world to survive underneath a socioeconomic system that is trying to kill us at all times.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a turn of the millennium game before we had like the vocabulary for like a AAA video game versus like these other games. Like it was just like this broadly understood, like we have our anchor game, we have our Sonic the Hedgehog that keeps the lights on so we can make other games and like experiment a little bit, and something hits, it hits. And if it doesn't hit, well, you work on the next game. So it's, it's a tragedy because now like all these studios that keep getting sucked up and bought out and absorbed into places like Sony or Microsoft or what is it called? Embracer Group that just all have to like answer. Yeah, they just enter the embrace of acquisition and private equity or whatever.
Wow.
And they they have now like have to prove themselves to make billions when millions was more than okay as like an individual company. You would think like, oh, we now have like this windfall of, we can be more experimental, but no, it's now you have to fit into this model, and it's constricting the creativity of the world. And you don't get games like Res because now that's not the thing that's going to make the billions.
Yeah, you have to be maximizing your income per spend. And it's one of the things that hurts the most about interacting with a lot of larger game studios now is a lot of places they're very upfront about the fact that they do not make video games, they make shareholder value. Like their product is the stock price, and whatever they have to do to make that go up is the thing that they're doing. Which, like, on one hand, like, that's business. Like, that's all business. That's capitalism. Like, that's the whole thing. I realize that's not unique to video games. That's the entire grift from top to bottom.
Yeah.
But like, Res is absolutely a prototypical game you can point at as an example of like, this was not made for a profit. Like, this was not made to make money. This was made because some people had a cool idea for a thing that they thought should exist in the world, and they were able to make it happen, so they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've just had some painful experiences over the last few years with some different game studios and stuff where it's just where that realization becomes increasingly clear, or someone in leadership kind of makes it particularly stark, or just like says it out loud in so many words, and it's just like, oh yeah, you really don't care what you're making here, do you? You don't care about making a thing. There's not an artistic drive here. And you know, that's how you end up with games that are focus tested to death and designed by committee and stuff. And it's, again, none of this is new, and none of it is unique to video games, and none of this is novel by any means, but it's just as the screws are turned tighter and tighter with each passing day, as the world keeps getting worse in these very specific ways, just these problems become more and more obvious and more and more raw, and have detrimental effects on more and more people.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, if we want to go back to the dour note that we started on, that is the sad side of games like this. We were talking about Astrobot earlier, and Res is one of the games I was most surprised to see representation of in there, which is wild. Not to spoil it, sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm aware of it, that there is a Resbot.
A little Resbot, yeah.
Yeah.
Something that I felt about Astro's Playroom when it launched with the PS5, I was like, wow, this sure is a elaborate graveyard of a bunch of franchises that no longer exist or whatever, of types of games that are no longer made not because they're not financially viable, but because they're not as financially viable.
Mm-hmm.
But you could make millions, or you could make tens of millions or whatever, and it's just,
right.
I understand why that happens, but it's a bummer. But I think, sidetracking again, but I think the reason that the new one, Astrobot, ended up being a little bit less of that and a little bit more of the celebration that it's trying to position itself as is, I think, because they spent so much time digging into so many weird deep cuts that it felt seen. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that because it's referenced, like, there is a Res Astrobot. Res is not a Sony product. It was the first Sega game published on a PS2, but beyond that, it's like a legacy with the PS2 is tenuous at best.
Yeah, I mean, there's an ooh la la in there as well. It's like, because I guess, Space Channel 5 Part 2 had a PS2 port that came with the first one, I guess. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there that is not like distinctly Sony related or whatever, but the point is, it's just like there's a lot of types of games that are not made anymore just because it's either you're self-funded and independent, which is, extremely rare, or you are externally funded, in which case you are beholden to either shareholders or whoever is funding you.
Right. It's a bummer to see, Gravity Rush referenced in these kinds of things when like Japan Studio's been closed, and like those people are now working on Astro's, the Astrobot video game, and like as fun and, whimsical and like delightful as this game is and is fun to play, you also just mourn, like you said, the graveyard of things that could have been or could continue to be, and it couldn't just be cutesy references, but things that we see with regularity in some way or another, instead of a cutesy costume and a package. I know, like, I'm not trying to like be a person who's like, there's no artistic value or merit or fun to Astrobot, but it is just this thing where it's like, this is not really the best environment in which you want to be like, hey, do you remember these things that we used to make? When everyone's a little raw about how things aren't allowed to be made anymore.
Yeah, especially with, how many, very long-standing studios have been shuttered in the last 18 months alone.
Yeah.
It's like you'll run into like 9 different things referencing something really like cool and creative and fun and strange, and then all of them are dead, and then and then you'll find like the guy from Days Gone or whatever, and it's like you're just a sad robot with a beard now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I'm already a sad robot with a beard and a backwards hat. What do you? Come on.
Show me something I haven't seen already. Yeah, no, but like to turn it back to Rez a little bit and be like wistful instead of mournful, I guess. It's just like we have like this model of like showing that games can be more than just a product, and they can just provide an experience for you that you haven't gotten anywhere else. But like an industry just gets hung up on like having the biggest and the best or being the most something that something cannot just be. And this is a game that is basically the ethos of like just existing.
Yeah.
It's a harmonious game, not in the sense that it's like you are the player creating a harmony in a song, but or even promoting harmony among humanity. But it is just a game where it's like briefly for a moment, you are just one with a video game experience, and you reach a Zen state, a trance-like state where you're just like a part of something. And that's what this medium can be. And that's the medium in its purest form. And people should be allowed to make more experiences like that.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be like an escapist fantasy either. It can just be like something different for a little while, you know? Something like, yeah, it is absolutely the kind of game that you set up at like an art exhibit or whatever. Just, you know, leave a TV on a little stand or whatever and let people walk up and goof around with it or whatever. It is very much that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's everything I have to say about Rez. Is there anything else you want to add before we move to the next section here?
Yeah, I have no idea, man. I don't even know what I have and haven't said at this point. It's just power through. Let's go.
We've entered a trance-like flow state while talking about Rez,
yes.
which is appropriate for this episode. So
precisely.
Yeah. Before I end the show, I do like to have the guests make some recommendations for other works that relate back to the topic at hand. So what would you recommend for people who like Rez?
If you do like Rez, the first thing I would recommend you check out is a very late Dreamcast slash Naomi arcade game called Cosmic Smash, which is what if Rez was racquetball, I guess, and less musically. It's not nearly as like heady or trying to like involve you in the kind of like real time construction of music or anything, but it is very much in a similar aesthetic vein and has a really immaculate, stupid vibe, and I love it. And that was recently picked up by folks over at Rapid Eye Movers and not rebooted. I guess the sequel is closer to what the word would be, I guess, but whatever. York Tuttle made C Smash VRS, which is the VR like sequel effectively to Cosmic Smash, and that recently got a non-VR mode, I think, or will be getting it soon. So instead of tracking down an extremely rare Japan-only Dreamcast game that barely got a print run at all, just go. That's on everything already, or at least on Steam and PlayStation. That, or just like look into things that other people from this team went on to go do. So like if you follow the history of like what became then Q Entertainment after UGA, you get, Lumines and every Extend Extra Extreme, Medios, it's another Mizuguchi joint, and then stuff like Tetris Effect and all of that. Humanity is the most recent game that came out from Enhance Experiences, which is very much the kind of PS1 style of like they name dropped games like Intelligent Cube and stuff like that in terms of the kind of overall kind of mood and tone they were evoking. And like that's exactly the type of game that we were talking about that is not commonly funded or developed anymore. It's games like Humanity. So I highly recommend checking that out as well. And then on the other side of the scale is like, yo, go play Panzer Dragoon, all of them. None of them are really available anywhere. Orta, the original Xbox one, the last one, is backwards compatible on Series X and runs incredibly. I think it's also the weakest Panzer Dragoon game, but I still think it's pretty good. It's worth checking out there. But if you're looking for something mechanically similar, that's definitely the closest next thing is go play you some Panzer Dragoon.
Sure. I mean, all great recommendations and definitely worth checking out there. I have a few recommendations. One video game, for example, is Sayonara Wild Hearts. which is
Sure,
a
yeah.
rhythm action game developed by Simogo and was consciously influenced by Rez. There's no game quite like Rez, but this game is something that is taking active inspiration in terms of using telling a story as like a pop album that's like part Sailor Moon, part tarot card, part rhythm action game. It's incorporating a lot of different genres like runners and rail shooters along this journey, but it's like a pure musical experience where you are playing your way through tracks of a song and collecting things and shooting at things and saving the world as a magical girl on a motorcycle.
Tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time.
I believe one Patrick Klepek referred to that game as Carly Rez Jepsen.
Yeah. Great. Thank you,
Maybe
Patrick.
I imagined that just now. I think that happened.
Yeah, because it is definitely taking musical influence from the music of Carly Rae Jepsen and Churches in its musical design. When I heard the opening song before it goes into Claire de Lune for that first level, I thought, is this not Churches? And it's not. But as a Carly Rae Jepsen fan myself, to the extent of having seen her live, I do appreciate this game quite a bit. And Queen Latifah is the narrator of it, which I find delightful.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, it was like a very last minute thing, but like the narrator is Queen Latifah, and it's great.
Shout out to her first couple albums, by the way. No one talks about them, but
yeah,
this is good shit. She's a good rapper.
She could do everything.
Yes.
Yeah, Simogo also made Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which came out earlier this year, and the game was published by Annapurna Interactive. And if we want to talk about some things that have happened recently, Annapurna is certainly something we can talk about. Annapurna Interactive having published some of the best independent games of the last, 7 years since they've started publishing, like What Remains of Edith Finch, Outer Wilds, Kentucky Route Zero, when it was released in full, like Stray, Neon White, Solar Ash. Like it's published a lot of games, and it had like a lot of promising games to publish in the future. And we will see what happens with how those are going to get published, because its entire staff has decided to resign. The entire staff from top to bottom, it's staff of 25 people, in addition to the two heads of the department, because the division was trying to spin out into an independent entity from Annapurna Pictures. But the owner of Annapurna, Megan Ellison, who is notably the daughter of Larry Ellison, who is the fifth wealthiest man on the planet and currently a major funder of the annexation projects in Jerusalem, meaning that he is literally using his wealth to fund Palestinian apartheid. She said, nope, we're not going to let you guys spin out. And they're like, all right, well, if you guys won't let us be our own independent company called Annapurna Interactive, we'll just quit voluntarily and go do our own thing. And we will see where the future emerges with that. I'm very hopeful that's something. Yeah, because, these people have, curated wonderful taste and have funded and published some very, very incredible and crucial video games over the last several years. So we look forward to whatever they end up publishing and emerging as. And I am very glad that they no longer have to answer to, again, the daughter of Mr. Apartheid. So
yeah, I was going to say, unless they pull a weird last minute twist on us and find some new creative way to fund genocide. But I don't suspect that's in the cards.
Yeah, certainly not what the tarot cards in Sayonara Wild Hearts are trying to predict. So
not to my knowledge.
No, but the point is, I quite enjoy Sayonara Wild Hearts, and I'm very hopeful for the future of what is no longer Annapurna Interactive. And I just want to take that opportunity to promote a game that does relate to Rez, and also talk about another thing that's going on in this fucking industry.
As it crumbles around us.
I have a music recommendation. Magdalena Bay, which is an electronic pop duo, less EDM like this game, more grimesy, R.I.P. Grimes, but or Charlie XCX kind of music, but their music video style and overall aesthetic as a group is definitely one informed by digital spaces and formats, which feel very in line with the vibes of this game. Mercurial World is a very wonderful album from 2021 that I liked quite a lot, but the album they released this past year, this past August, is Imaginal Disc, which more than likely will be my album of the year. Image off of that album might particularly be my favorite track of the year. So if you are looking for music that just sort of feels very trancey, vibey, but in a more poppy sense, check out Magdalena Bay. Seriously, one of my favorite. This probably will be my favorite album of the year. I can't stop listening to it.
Nice.
So I've given a video game recommendation. I've given a music recommendation. Time for a movie recommendation. Ghost in the Shell, the film directed by Mamoru Oshii, which is hard to describe this film because it is something on its surface and it is something deeper underneath, but it is more or less about the existential nature of what it means to be a person and what it means to be a machine, and where a soul begins, and where the soul begins, where the body ends, how important is the body to the part of a soul. But it is definitely like about the digital and the human, the relationship between machine and man, and self and identity, and what it means to pass on information the same way that we pass on genetics and culture and continue to exist. So a lot of heady ideas. I think that a lot of those themes are touched upon as you play Rez, albeit in a less, Rez is a much more interactive game. And I think Ghost in the Shell leaves you with a lot to consider, while also seeing like a lot of sequences like, wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Wow, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. So if you want something that's more narrative, check out Ghost in the Shell. Great movie.
Yeah, that whole movie is dancing all around that line between, soul and body, and using kind of a digital realm as a way to like abstract that thematically and narratively. No one needs me to tell them to go watch Ghost in the Shell, I feel like, at this point. Like, but if you haven't, yes, go do that, probably.
Yeah, no, it's just like this thing where it's like I was playing the first 4 levels of Rez. It's like, I like this. I like this aesthetic and style and everything. And then you play Area 5 and it's like doing like life, people, evolution, birth. And I'm like, oh, okay, Ghost in the Shell. Writing that down from my notes here. Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, it's also like the last 2 hours of MGS2.
Yeah.
You know what? While we're at it, this is only barely related, but I was thinking about some of the like simpler flash shaded polygons and stuff at the beginning. Go watch that black and white cut of Johnny Mnemonic. Everybody, anybody, and
You're
everybody.
Right. Because I watched a regular version of Johnny Mnemonic a couple years ago, and I was like, entertaining, but obviously like strange, bizarre movie. But I hear that black and white cut, which was like what the director intended to make.
It was lit for it, yeah.
Lit for black and white and everything like that. I want to revisit it. So thank you for that
Super
recommendation,
good.
for reminding me.
Go hang out with Beat Takeshi for a while. That's always a good option.
Hell yeah. Go see a dolphin with some weird tech attached to it. A psychic dolphin.
Exactly.
Yeah. Black and white Johnny Mnemonic. Any other recommendations before I end this episode?
Oh, the one weird music thing I was going to add is we talked earlier about this game keeping its music licensing intact, and that is the case for the most part. Mindkiller, the Adam Freeland song, has one sample that they did not clear, which is California Soul by Marlene Shaw, which is a classic summer jam. And as September winds to a close here, that's a real good one to just open all the windows and blast that as the sun goes down. Just soak in some 70s soul vibes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why the only like quote unquote real version of that song is like on YouTube and stuff. It's not on any of the OST releases. Like the song is, it's just missing that whole section.
Yeah, that's going to do it today for Select and Start. Before I end the episode and let you go, please promote the hell out of yourself, Andrew.
Okay. You can find my design portfolio at elmore.design. My music stuff is all linked up there as well, but that's over on Bandcamp for the most part. I don't know. I'm active on Blue Sky at elmore.zone. I haven't checked Twitter in a very long time, and co-host will be gone by the time this goes live, I think. So I guess that's kind of it in terms of socials or whatever. I am working on another big old YouTube project that should be fun. That is at least lightly Dreamcast adjacent. That'll take a while, but I've been very slowly working on some video essay stuff on the YouTube channel Mythic Resonance for a bit there. And hopefully the one that I'm working on right now will not take too long. I don't want to say it out loud in case I jinx myself, but keep an eye out if you like old Namco stuff.
All right. Looking forward to it. I can't wait to see what the surprise is. It was wonderful to have you here. I really appreciate having your unique perspective in a podcast such as this. I really appreciate you setting aside time for this. So thank you. And thank you for listening to this episode of Select and Start. Once again, I am your host, editor, and promoter, Keifer. If you enjoyed this episode, please give the show a positive review wherever you're listening to this. Engagement helps the show, and your feedback will improve it. And if you want to get more engaged, give the show a follow on Twitter and Blue Sky at SelectPodStart. If you have thoughts about Rez or any other games we discussed, send a DM or leave a comment, and I will gladly read it on the show. You can also support me on Patreon. If you pledge at least $1 a month, you'll get early access to new episodes as well as extended episodes with exclusive content. That's on patreon.com/KeifersCorner. You can find the link to that and the rest of my projects in the description of this episode. Select and Start is on the Moonshot Network, which is supported by its own Patreon. Find out more on moonshotpods.com. The art for the show is made by my best friend Avery Ott. You can follow him on social media with the handle at Avery Robin Ott. That's AVRY Robin OTT. The show's theme song was composed by Mike Petrie. You can check out the links in the description for both their works as well as Andrew's. All right, I think that's it. She still lies trapped within the system. No sexual meaning.